Chapter 2564. This was not the first time that Duan Lingtian had heard of the Gongsun family. Previously, when he was traveling to the Milky Way with Tang Xiaoxiao from the Cos Galaxy, he had talked to her about the top forces in Yanhuang realm, including the Gongsun family. During that period of time, he had also learned from Tang Xiaoxiao. The Gongsun family was one of the first-tier forces in Yanhuang realm. They were as famous as the Yellow Arch Mansion. In terms of strength, they were even stronger than top forces like Mount Huagua and the Celestial Masters sect. Like the Yellow Arch Mansion, the Gongsun clan had 2 9-tribulation bodiless celestials, no less than 5 8-tribulation bodiless celestials, and even more 7-tribulation bodiless celestials. More importantly, one of the 2 9-tribulation bodiless celestials from the Gongsun clan was widely acknowledged as the strongest person in Yanhuang realm. I heard that the Gongsun clan is a force left behind by the old ancestor of your Yellow Arch Mansion, Gongsun Xianyuan? A cold light flashed in Duan Lingtian's eyes. When he asked, his lightning-like gaze landed on Xianyuan Ji and Xianyuan Zheng, as if he wanted to get confirmation from them. Yes. Xianyuan Ji nodded and continued. I don't know when it started, but the forces left behind by the ancestors split into 2. They became sworn enemies and fought endlessly. Those who were originally of the same lineage also became sworn enemies. In the end, they were divided into the Gongsun clan and the Xianyuan clan. One of them was surnamed Gongsun, while the other was surnamed Xianyuan. Moreover, it's not limited to the mundane realms. Even the Devata realms are divided into the Gongsun clan and the Yellow Arch Mansion. It's said that the conflict between the Yellow Arch Mansion and the Gongsun clan is even more intense in the Devata realms. There are people who are killed every day. However, those who emerge victorious, regardless of whether they're from the Gongsun clan or the Yellow Arch Mansion, will be personally nurtured by the old ancestor. When Xianyuan Ji mentioned Gongsun Xianyuan, the old ancestor of Yellow Arch Mansion, a hint of respect could be heard in his voice. To a certain extent, Gongsun Xianyuan was the faith of everyone in the Xianyuan mansion and the Gongsun family. In that case, to a certain extent, the conflict between the Gongsun clan and the Xianyuan mansion was also tacitly approved by your common ancestor. Gongsun Xianyuan? Duan Lingtian couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he heard Xianyuanji's words. It wasn't difficult to guess this. You could say that. Xianyuanji nodded. As expected of the Yellow Emperor, Gongsun Xianyuan. To think that he would use such a method to train the younger generation. How bold. Previously, the pagoda spirit of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda, Hualao, the 3-legged golden crow, had told him that the Yellow Emperor of Yanhuang planet, Gongsun Xianyuan, was not only a genius sword cultivator, but he had also become an overlord after ascending to a Devata realm. Duan Lingtian even suspected that the Gongsun clan and the Xianyuan mansion were the main culprits. It was highly likely that Gongsun Xianyuan was the one who had orchestrated the conflict between the Gongsun clan and the Xianyuan mansion. His purpose was to train the younger generation so that he could personally train the younger generation. After all, he had limited time and energy. It was impossible for him to personally train all the younger generation. It doesn't matter if the Gongsun clan is a force left behind by Gongsun Xianyuan or not. Since they dare to covet the sovereign heart sword that I possess, and even captured my friend to threaten me, I'm afraid they won't be able to do anything to me. They'll have to pay the price for this. A terrible price. Duan Lingtian muttered inwardly as the coldness in his eyes rose again. It was so intense that the temperature in the surroundings seemed to have dropped by a few degrees in just an instant. Brother, where's the Gongsun clan? Duan Lingtian asked bluntly as he looked at Xianyuan Ji. It seemed as though he was about to attack the Gongsun clan. In fact, Duan Lingtian was indeed prepared to kill his way to the Gongsun clan and rescue Su Li after finding out the location of the Gongsun clan. He wanted the Gongsun clan to pay a heavy price for their actions. Brother Lingtian. Xianyuan Ji did not seem surprised by Duan Lingtian's reaction. After a moment of silence he said, I know you're not weak. With your ability to steal celestial supreme treasures, and kill a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial. I'm sure you're strong. However, the Gongsun clan is not to be underestimated as well. Let's take the Gongsun clan's strongest person for example. Not only is he a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial, but he's also a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial who has mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique. In other words, he's a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial who can cast soul attacks. Perhaps, before he took Elder Suli away from the Yellow Arch Mansion, he might not have taken any precautions against you. In fact, you might have killed him with a sneak attack before he could cast a soul attack on you. However, after he took Elder Suli away, he'll definitely be wary of you. You won't have a chance to attack him before he casts a soul attack on you. Xian Yuanji advised Duan Ling Tian patiently. At the same time, he told Duan Ling Tian one thing. The Gongsun clan's strongest person in Yanhuang realm had mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique and was capable of casting soul attacks. Thank you for your reminder, brother. However, I know what I'm doing. Duan Ling Tian remained calm in the face of Xian Yuanji's patient advice. He said nonchalantly, Brother, if you have a star map that covers the galaxies where the Yellow Arch Mansion and the Gongsun clan are located, please give me a copy. Brother Ling Tian, are you serious? Xian Yuanji's eyes widened as he asked uncertainly. One of the old men from the Gongsun clan is a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial who has mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique. So what? Duan Ling Tian said indifferently, seemingly unconcerned about whether the old man was a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial who had mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique. When Xian Yuanji saw Duan Ling Tian's calm expression, it seemed as though he was not afraid of the 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun clan, who had mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique. Xian Yuanji began to suspect something. Duan Ling Tian must have something to rely on. However, Xian Yuanji did not know what Duan Ling Tian's trump card was. Since you've made up your mind, Brother Ling Tian, I'll go with you. Xian Yuanji said. No matter what, Elder Suli was abducted by the 2 old men from the Gongsun clan right under my nose. Xian Yuanji's eyes flashed with a cold light, as if he was going to devour someone. Since the Gongsun clan had a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial, who was widely acknowledged as the strongest person in Yanhuang realm, they were considered the strongest force in Yanhuang realm. The galaxy ruled by the Gongsun clan was called the Mystic Ancient Galaxy. It was much larger than any of the galaxies Duan Ling Tian had been to in Yanhuang realm. It was at least twice as large as the galaxy ruled by the Yellow Arch Mansion. Moreover, the heaven and earth spirit energy in this galaxy was much denser than the galaxy ruled by the Yellow Arch Mansion. Brother Ling Tian, this is the galaxy where the Gongsun clan is located, the Mystic Ancient Galaxy. At the edge of the mystical ancient galaxy, Xian Yuanji, who had just entered the mystical ancient galaxy with Duan Ling Tian, explained the situation to Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian nodded as he looked at the galaxy before him. He had heard from Xian Yuanji that the Mystic Ancient Galaxy did not exist in the Mystic Ancient Galaxy. The Xian Celestial System where the Gongsun family lived had no interstellar teleportation formation. Whether it was an outsider coming to the Xian Celestial System, or a member of the Gongsun family wanting to leave the Xian Celestial System, they had to travel through space with their physical body to enter or leave the Xian Celestial System. The reason the Gongsun clan did this was to make the Mystic Ancient Galaxy more independent and easier to manage. Who's there? Duan Ling Tian and Xian Yuanji stopped at the edge of the Mystical Ancient Galaxy. They were about to enter the Mystical Ancient Galaxy and head to the planet where the Gongsun family's base was when a voice rang in the air. It was as though thunder had struck their ears. Swoosh! A figure appeared in front of Duan Ling Tian and Xian Yuanji like a ghost. Although the figure was like a ghost, it could not hide from Duan Ling Tian and Xian Yuanji's eyes. Even before the figure appeared, they could tell it was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man dressed in a blue robe. Xian Yuanji? His expression changed drastically when he saw Xian Yuanji standing next to Duan Ling Tian. It was obvious he did not expect to see a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from Yellow the Archmansion, one of the 2 old ancestors of Yellow the Archmansion here. He was a 7 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun clan, and held a high position in the clan. However, he was nothing in front of a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial like Xian Yuanji. Who are you? Do you know me? Xian Yuanji asked in surprise as he glanced at the middle-aged man indifferently. I'm an elder from the Gongsun clan. I was fortunate enough to meet you once, senior. The middle-aged man lowered his head and said nervously. At the same time, he regretted his decision to show up. He had planned to leave the mystic ancient galaxy and head to another galaxy. Just as he was about to leave the mystical ancient galaxy, he noticed 2 people sneaking around the periphery of the galaxy. For this reason, he instinctively showed himself to show off his superiority as an elder of the Gongsun family and a 7 tribulation bodiless celestial. Alas, he did not expect he would end up kicking a steel plate. If he had known one of the 2 people was one of the ancestors of the Yellow the Archmansion, he would not have come even if he was given 100 guts. You're from the Gongsun clan. Chapter 2565. Yes. Faced with Xian Yuanji's piercing gaze, the middle-aged man did not dare to be negligent. He quickly replied, Senior, my name is Gongsun Yin. I'm an elder of the Gongsun family. I heard that your Gongsun family moved to another planet 300 years ago. Now take us there. Take me there. Xian Yuanji said indifferently as he looked at Gongsun Yin. Although Xian Yuanji's voice was indifferent, there was a hint of threat in his tone. Gongsun Yin's expression changed drastically, but he did not dare to refuse Xian Yuanji's order. If he refused, who knew if the old ancestor of the Yellow the Archmansion would kill him or not? Although he was a 7 tribulation bodiless celestial in the Gongsun family, if Xian Yuanji killed him, the Gongsun family would not be able to avenge him even if they wanted to. After all, even the strongest supreme elder in the Gongsun family would not be able to kill Xian Yuanji. Under Gongsun Yun's lead, Duan Lingtian and Xian Yuanji soon arrived at the planet where the Gongsun family's estate was located. It was a blue planet. With just a glance, one could tell the planet had a good environment. It was similar to Earth, but it was at least 10 times bigger than Earth. Senior, the Gongsun family's estate is on this planet. Gongsun Yun looked at Xian Yuanji anxiously and asked, Can I leave now? Scram, Xian Yuanji said indifferently. Gongsun Yun also left as though he was running for his life. In just a blink of an eye, he disappeared before Duan Lingtian and Xian Yuanji's eyes. I'm Duan Lingtian. Xian Yuanji was about to ask Duan Lingtian what he was going to do next when Duan Lingtian's voice rang in his ears. Bring Suli out in 15 minutes. If I don't see Suli in 15 minutes, I, Duan Lingtian, will annihilate the Gongsun family. As soon as Duan Lingtian's voice rang in the air, not only did it enter Xian Yuanji's ears, but it also shocked him. Even the people on the planet ahead could hear Duan Lingtian's voice. The commotion broke out instantly. Whoosh! The entire planet was in an uproar. Duan Lingtian? Is he the Duan Lingtian who broke into the Heavenly Wave Mansion and killed a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial? Apart from that Duan Lingtian, who else would be so arrogant to the point of saying he's going to annihilate the Gongsun family? The Gongsun family is one of the strongest forces in Yanhuang realm. One of the 9 tribulation bodiless celestials from the Gongsun family is widely acknowledged as the strongest person in Yanhuang realm. Isn't Duan Lingtian seeking death by coming to the Gongsun clan openly? I don't think so. After all, Duan Lingtian is capable of killing a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial. He even killed a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Heavenly Wave Mansion. Similar discussions could be heard everywhere on the planet where the Gongsun family was based. When they heard Duan Lingtian's voice, they could vaguely guess who he was. Duan Lingtian was most likely the person who had killed a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Heavenly Wave Mansion. Whether it was the planet where the Gongsun family was based or the other planets in the mystic ancient galaxy, there were not only people from the Gongsun family, But there were also people from second-rate and third-rate forces in Yanhuang realm, as well as some sectless cultivators. Those people were subordinates of the Gongsun family. While they occupied the cultivation resources of the mysterious ancient star system, they also had to pay a large number of saint stones to the Gongsun family every once in a while. It was similar to protection fees and rent. It's true that he killed a 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the heavenly wave mansion, but don't forget that the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the heavenly wave mansion didn't use a soul attack on him. I've heard about this as well. It's said that Duan Lingtian is only an eminent celestial. Although he's strong and has mastered the technique to steal celestial supreme treasures, his soul is only at the level of an eminent celestial. The 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the heavenly wave mansion was a 9-tribulation bodiless celestial who had mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique. I can't believe he was killed by Duan Lingtian. Indeed, Duan Lingtian had a chance to kill Duan Lingtian. At the very least, he could have taken Duan Lingtian down with him. Many people knew that Duan Lingtian was only an eminent celestial, and that the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the heavenly wave mansion was killed by Duan Lingtian, without knowing that Duan Lingtian was a 9-tribulation bodiless celestial. Otherwise, the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial would have taken Duan Lingtian down with him. If I'm not mistaken, the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family, who's widely acknowledged as the strongest person in Yanhuang realm, is also a bodiless celestial who has mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique. Right? You're right. The 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family is indeed a bodiless celestial who has mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique. The 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family is much stronger than the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the heavenly wave mansion. Since he's also a bodiless celestial who has mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique, he should be able to take Duan Lingtian down with him if he's prepared. Moreover, as long as he strikes first, he might be able to kill Duan Lingtian with his soul attack without being injured at all. If Duan Lingtian strikes first and kills the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial before the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial can use his soul attack, Duan Lingtian won't be harmed at all. That's true. Similar discussions began to spread on the planet where the Gongsun family's base was. At this moment, most people were unsure of who would win. If Duan Lingtian fought the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family, who had mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique, who would emerge victorious? The only thing they were certain of was that whoever made the first move would be undefeatable. Even if they were undefeatable, they would still be able to take their opponent down with them. That's awkward. I still think the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family will win. If Duan Lingtian sneaked into the Gongsun family's base and attacked the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family, he might have a chance of winning. However, now that he's here with such fanfare, the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family must be prepared. It'll be difficult for him to strike first. I agree. I really don't know what Duan Lingtian is thinking. How can he be so brainless as to barge in here? Did he forget that he's just an eminent celestial? Gradually, more and more people began to doubt Duan Lingtian. They felt Duan Lingtian was too rash and had alerted the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family. In outer space outside the blue planet. Brother Lingtian, you're too rash, aren't you? Xian Yuanji was confused as well. He had thought of many possibilities regarding the beginning of today's matter, but he had never thought that it would be like this. Similarly, he felt Duan Lingtian was too rash. Duan Lingtian had shouted as though he was afraid the Gongsun family would not know he was here. Moreover, the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family would definitely be alerted by Duan Lingtian. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for Duan Lingtian to kill the 9-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family. Rash. Upon hearing Xian Yuanji's words, Duan Lingtian smiled faintly and shrugged indifferently. Perhaps. Duan Lingtian, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time. As soon as Duan Lingtian shrugged, an old voice rang from the blue planet. Duan Lingtian and Xian Yuanji were not the only ones who heard the voice. Everyone on the blue planet heard it as well. It's that old man, Gongsun Wentian. Xian Yuanji's eyes widened in anger. If the other 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family had made a move, he wouldn't have been able to take Su Li away under his watch. It was because this person had also made a move that he failed to protect Su Li. Even if Xian Yuanji's elder brother, Xian Yuanrui, was present, he would not have been able to stop Gongsun Wentian. After all, Gongsun Wentian was much stronger than him and his elder brother. Gongsun Wentian? Upon hearing Xian Yuanji's words, Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes as they flashed coldly. Gongsun Wentian, the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm. Not only had Xian Yuanji mentioned this name to Duan Lingtian, but Tang Xiaoxiao had also mentioned this name before. Duan Lingtian knew Gongsun Wentian was a legend in Yanhuang realm, and was widely acknowledged as the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 gusts of wind blew as 2 figures appeared in front of Duan Lingtian and Xian Yuanji. To be more precise, there were 3 figures. One of the figures was an old man in a blue robe, and the other figure was an old man in a green robe. In his hand was a young man whose face was pale, whose body was on the verge of collapse, and whose eyelids were slightly drooping. Su Li. Duan Lingtian's expression changed drastically when he saw the young man's condition. He glared at the old man dressed in a green robe and said, "Old man, what did you do to Su Li?" Duan Lingtian. The old man dressed in a green robe said in a hoarse voice. The person in the green-robed old man's hand was none other than Duan Lingtian's good friend, Su Li. When he heard Duan Lingtian's voice, he struggled to open his eyes and said in a hoarse voice, "Go. Don't bother about me. Go. Gongsun Wentian." Xian Yuanji's expression darkened as he glared at the old man dressed in a green robe. He said coldly, How dare you torture Elder Su Li to this extent? Do you think the Yellow Larch Mansion is a pushover? I didn't intend to torture him anyway. The old man dressed in a green robe, Gongsun Wentian, who was widely acknowledged as the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm, said nonchalantly, "However, if I didn't seal the energy in his body and torture him, I'm afraid he would have committed suicide by now. This boy is very loyal. He'd rather die than be used by me to threaten his friend." After all, apart from bodiless celestials, only people younger than 100 years old can enter the Beyond Heaven secret zone. The people who came to join in the fun, whether they were from the Gongsun family or the others, were all looking at Duan Lingtian. They began to whisper among themselves as they discussed Duan Lingtian. Are these 2 the old ancestors of the Gongsun family, who are 9 tribulation bodiless celestials? At the same time, many people's gazes landed on Gongsun Wentian, who was holding Su Li, and the old man beside him. They're the 2 old ancestors of the Gongsun family? Some disciples of the Gongsun family, who had never seen the old ancestors of the Gongsun family, before turned to look at Gongsun Wentian and the old man. The 2 old ancestors of the Gongsun family are called Gongsun Hong and Gongsun Wentian respectively. Which one of them is the strongest person in Yanhuang realm? Gongsun Wentian. It wasn't just those who weren't from the Gongsun family who were curious about this matter. Even the disciples of the Gongsun family, who couldn't tell which of the 2 old ancestors of the Gongsun family was the most powerful being in Yanhuang realm, were curious as well. That's old ancestor Wentian from the Gongsun family. At this time, many of the Gongsun family's disciples who had seen Gongsun Wentian before and recognized him whispered to those who couldn't recognize Gongsun Wentian. Those who did not recognize Gongsun Wentian immediately knew which of the 2 old men was the strongest person in Yanhuang realm. Gongsun Wentian. He was the old man who was holding a young man with drooping eyelids and a pale face. The young man's body was swaying unsteadily. Who's that young man in Senior Wentian's hand? Don't tell me it's Su Li whom Duan Lingtian demanded the Gongsun clan to hand over. Based on Duan Lingtian's words, it seems like he's asking the Gongsun family to hand over someone called Su Li. If he doesn't see Su Li in 15 minutes, He'll annihilate the Gongsun family. That's exactly what he said. Based on Duan Lingtian's words, many people could guess that the young man in Gongsun Wentian's hand was Duan Lingtian's target. Who knows what's going on? Who's this Suli? Why is Duan Lingtian looking for him? Based on the situation, I don't think Suli is from the Gongsun family. Otherwise, the Gongsun family wouldn't have tortured him to this extent. More and more people were confused. They did not know why the Gongsun family's ancestor, who was widely acknowledged as the strongest person in Yanhuang realm, was holding a young man in his hand. Moreover, it seemed like he was using the young man to threaten Duan Lingtian. These confused people weren't just from the Gongsun family. Even the members of the Gongsun family were dumbfounded. They had no idea what was going on. What's going on? That's right. What's going on? Who's this Suli? Can someone tell me what's going on? The Gongsun family's disciples looked around in confusion, hoping to learn the truth from the other Gongsun family's disciples who knew what was going on. Soon, some of the members of the Gongsun family who were in the know spoke up, and the bewildered crowd finally understood what was going on. As it turns out, the Gongsun family is interested in Duan Lingtian's technique that allows him to plunder celestial supreme treasures. That's why they captured Duan Lingtian's friend, Suli, and used him to threaten Duan Lingtian to hand over the technique. I didn't expect things to turn out this way. I thought Duan Lingtian thought he was strong and wanted to challenge the Gongsun family to make a name for himself. I didn't expect he's only here to save his friend. It's inappropriate for the Gongsun family to do this, isn't it? Many people who were not from the Gongsun family could not help but whisper among themselves after learning the truth. However, they only dared to whisper to each other in a low voice, afraid that they would incur the displeasure of the Gongsun family if they spoke too loudly. Some of the more righteous disciples of the Gongsun family fell silent after learning the truth. Although they did not agree with the actions of the old ancestor of the Gongsun family, they knew their words carried little weight. Even if they voiced their objections, it would not change anything. Naturally, the disciples of the Gongsun family were more excited as they stared at Duan Lingtian greedily. After all, if the Gongsun family obtained Duan Lingtian's technique, they would have a chance to cultivate it in the future. When they thought about how they could easily plunder other people's celestial supreme treasures, they could not help but feel excited. The human heart was greedy to begin with. Otherwise, the 2-9 tribulation bodiless celestials from the Gongsun family would not have captured Suli to threaten Duan Lingtian to hand over the technique that allowed him to plunder other people's celestial supreme treasures. Duan Lingtian, under the watchful eyes of the others, Gongsun Wentian, who had been staring at Duan Lingtian for about 15 minutes, broke the silence between him and Duan Lingtian. He said in a deep voice, "I'm sure you've learned about my objective from Xian Yuanji. Today, as long as you swear on the lightning penalty oath that you'll teach the Gongsun family the technique that allows you to plunder other people's celestial supreme treasures and promise not to oppose the Gongsun family for the rest of your life, I won't kill you. In fact, I can even spare Suli's life. Otherwise, don't blame me for killing you before killing Suli." Gongsun Wentian looked at Duan Lingtian murderously. "You should know that I'm a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial who has cultivated the soul congregation embodiment. I can kill you with a soul attack with just a thought. From the moment I appeared until now, I had many chances to kill you. I'm sure you know that as well." Gongsun Wentian continued to say, "Naturally, you can also attack me, but I can guarantee you that Suli will die before I'm killed by you." Does he really think Gongsun Wentian won't dare to touch him because he possesses a technique that can steal celestial supreme treasures? Those who were not from the Gongsun clan felt Duan Lingtian was boasting again. They did not think Duan Lingtian would be able to survive if Duan Lingtian and Gongsun Wentian fought to the death. Both of them would most likely die together. Even if one of them survived, it would most likely be Gongsun Wentian. How arrogant! He's too arrogant. Duan Lingtian dares to say he's going to annihilate the Gongsun clan in front of the old ancestor? I think he's tired of living. Does he really think he's invincible just because his strength is comparable to a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial, and he possesses a technique that can steal celestial supreme treasures? Don't forget his soul is only at the level of an eminent celestial. He won't be able to withstand a single blow from the old ancestor's soul attack. Does he really intend to perish together with the old ancestor? Most of the members of the Gongsun clan present on the scene thought Duanling Tian was too arrogant. Only a few of them who were calmer looked at Duanling Tian, who was emitting a cold aura and killing intent. Do you really think I won't dare to touch him? At this moment, Gongsun Wentian, who was stunned by Duanling Tian's words, finally regained his senses. He tightened his grip on Su Li's hand, causing Su Li's face to turn even paler. It seemed as though he would suffocate at any moment. You can touch him, but I'll fulfill my promise. Once Su Li dies, I'll annihilate the Gongsun clan, Duanling Tian said indifferently. His tone turned colder when he spoke, making it difficult for people to doubt his words. So, you really don't intend to hand over the technique that can steal celestial supreme treasures? Gongsun Wentian's tone turned slightly impatient at this moment. When he brought Su Li along earlier, he felt that he could control everything in his hands, and even Duanling Tian would be toyed with in the palm of his hand. However, when he revealed himself, he discovered that Duanling Tian was not only toyed with by Duanling Tian was not toyed with by him. Instead, Duanling Tian had taken the initiative, causing Gongsun Wentian to feel extremely passive. Don't you understand human language? Duanling Tian said with a sneer. Good, very good. Since that's the case, I'll kill Su Li now. Gongsun Wentian's eyes flashed coldly as he made a move to kill Su Li. Of course, he didn't really want to kill Su Li, but only wanted to scare Duanling Tian and see if Duanling Tian was deliberately deceiving him. Whoosh! However, when Gongsun Wentian's palm landed on Su Li's forehead and was about to kill Su Li, he suddenly stopped. You really don't care about Su Li's life? Gongsun Wentian's eyes were filled with disbelief when he looked at Duanling Tian again. He did not expect Duanling Tian to be serious and not bluffing. Based on his investigation, Su Li was Duanling Tian's best friend. It was impossible for Duanling Tian to ignore Su Li's life. This Duanling Tian is actually not deliberately mystifying things. Earlier, the old ancestor almost killed his friend. How could he not do anything about it? It seems like Duanling Tian is really going to abandon his friend. However, does he really think he's capable of wiping out the Gongsun clan to avenge his friend? The people present on the scene, whether they were from the Gongsun family or the others, initially thought Duanling Tian was just putting on a show. In fact, he still cared about his friend's life and death. It was only when Gongsun Wentian's probing failed that they realized Duanling Tian was not putting on a show. I know you won't kill him for real. Faced with Gongsun Wentian's incredulous question, Duanling Tian replied nonchalantly, You're a cautious person. You won't dare to kill Su Li before you're certain you have the ability to kill me. This is because you're worried that after you kill Su Li, you won't be able to kill me. If that happens, the Gongsun clan will be wiped out. Duanling Tian's wise eyes landed on Gongsun Wentian, as though he could see through Gongsun Wentian's heart. You know me quite well. Gongsun Wentian's expression darkened when he heard Duanling Tian's words. He felt as though everything he had done was going according to Duanling Tian's plan. This made him extremely displeased. His eyes gleamed coldly. Since you're seeking death, I'll fulfill your wish. Gongsun Wentian realized that Duanling Tian was determined not to compromise. Therefore, he no longer held back. With a thought, 2 beams of light shot out from his eyes. They intertwined and shot toward Duanling Tian like 2 dragons playing with a pearl. This was Gongsun Wentian's soul attack. Whoosh! Gongsun Wentian's soul attack was as fast as lightning. In just a blink of an eye, it was already in front of Duanling Tian. As long as it entered Duanling Tian's body, it would immediately attack Duanling Tian's soul and destroy Duanling Tian's soul. However, in between the flashes of lightning, whoosh! Another voice rang in the air. Duanling Tian raised his hand and threw a defective metal piece at Gongsun Wentian with a profound hidden weapon technique. It was as though he had predicted Gongsun Wentian's soul attack would be coming at him. Gongsun Wentian's soul attack was blocked by the defective metal piece. Humph. Seeing this, Gongsun Wentian could not help but sneer. How can my soul attack be blocked by a mere material attack? You actually want to use material attacks to block Martial Uncle's soul attack. What a joke! Gongsun Hong, the other 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family, could not help but laugh disdainfully. Chapter 2568. A material attack and a soul attack were 2 completely different types of attacks. A material attack would leave a mark on a person's body or an object. Moreover, the object could be used to defend against the attack. However, a soul attack was different. A soul attack would not leave a mark on a person's body. Even if it killed a person, it would only destroy the person's soul. There would not be any fatal wounds on the surface. Apart from that, a soul attack could ignore most objects. The only exception was if the object was protected by a formation or restriction that countered a soul attack. However, such a formation or restriction would not appear in mundane realms. Only Devata realms would have such a formation or restriction. For this reason, Duan Lingtian merely raised his hand and shot out a defective metal piece to block Gongsun Wentian's soul attack. In Gongsun Wentian's opinion, Duan Lingtian's action was completely unnecessary. This was because he felt his soul attack could easily penetrate the defective metal piece that contained a material attack. Not only would it be able to penetrate Duan Lingtian's body, but it would also be able to destroy Duan Lingtian's soul. Gongsun Wentian and Gongsun Hong, who were standing next to him, felt the same way. In fact, apart from the 2 9 tribulation bodiless celestials from the Gongsun family, even Xian Yuanji, a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Yellow Arch Mansion, who was standing next to Duan Lingtian, felt the same way. That's a soul attack. Brother Lingtian's action is destined to be futile. At this moment, even Xian Yuanji thought to himself, Duan Lingtian is doomed. There's no doubt Duan Lingtian will die. The old ancestor is using a soul attack? Humph. Duan Lingtian is seeking death. The old ancestor is a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial. His soul attack is comparable to the soul attack of a peak heavenly celestial in a Devata realm. Duan Lingtian is only an eminent celestial. There's no way he can withstand the old ancestor's soul attack. There's a path to heaven, but he refuses to take it, and there's no door to hell. Duan Lingtian is seeking death. The few 8 tribulation bodiless celestials from the Gongsun family couldn't see the situation clearly, but they could vaguely guess what was going on. They sneered, not believing that Duan Lingtian could survive. This Duan Lingtian actually blocked Gongsun Wentian's soul attack. Not only will his efforts be in vain, he will also lose the opportunity to perish together with Gongsun Wentian. I really don't know what he's thinking. Could it be that he really thinks his material attack can withstand Gongsun Wentian's soul attack? There were 2 8 tribulation bodiless celestials among the sectless cultivators present on the scene. They couldn't help but shake their heads, thinking that Duan Lingtian had gone mad. Instead of taking the opportunity to perish together with Gongsun Wentian, he had used a material attack to defend against Gongsun Wentian's soul attack. In their opinion, it was destined that material attacks and soul attacks would never come into contact with each other, since they were on 2 completely different levels. However, just when the group of 8 tribulation bodiless celestials and 9 tribulation bodiless celestials thought Duan Lingtian's efforts were in vain, a sudden change occurred. Swoosh, swoosh. In the eyes of the 8 tribulation bodiless celestials and 9 tribulation bodiless celestials, the defective metal piece that Duan Lingtian had thrown out finally collided with Gongsun Wentian's soul attack that resembled 2 dragons playing with a pearl. They thought the defective metal piece that Duan Lingtian had thrown out would not even come into contact with Gongsun Wentian's soul attack. This was because the latter, to a certain extent, only existed in an illusory form and did not truly exist. However, when the defective metal piece that Duan Lingtian had thrown out collided with Gongsun Wentian's soul attack, they could not help but widen their eyes in shock and disbelief. This was because they saw Gongsun Wentian's soul attack that resembled two dragons playing with the pearl vanish without a trace when it collided with the defective metal piece. It seemed as though it had been devoured by the defective metal piece. Swoosh! Before the group of people could regain their senses, Duan Lingtian waved his hand casually. The defective metal piece that was flying toward Gongsun Wentian made a turn in the air and returned to Duan Lingtian's hand. The soul attack of a 9 bodiless celestial. Is this all there is to it? At the same time, Duan Lingtian said indifferently as he played with the defective metal piece in his hand. He glanced at Gongsun Wentian coldly. Gasp! 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 As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the 8 bodiless celestials and 9 bodiless celestials finally regained their senses. All of them gasped as they looked at Duan Lingtian, with a hint of fear and dread in their eyes. This was especially true for Gongsun Wentian, the 9 bodiless celestial from the Gongsun clan, who was widely acknowledged as the strongest person in Yanhuang realm. He had not held back when he had cast his soul attack earlier. It had even damaged his soul to a certain extent. It would take at least 10 days to half a month for his soul to recover to its peak. However, Duan Lingtian was still able to block the soul attack that he had cast in such a manner. Moreover, Duan Lingtian had easily blocked his soul attack. What's that metal piece in his hand? Gongsun Wentian asked as he looked at the defective metal piece in Duan Lingtian's hand. Naturally, he could tell Duan Lingtian was only able to block his soul attack due to the uniqueness of the defective metal piece. The 8 bodiless celestials and 9 bodiless celestials present on the scene could not help but look at the defective metal piece in Duan Lingtian's hand. At first glance, the defective metal piece seemed ordinary. However, upon closer inspection, they discovered that there were faint traces of light surrounding it. There were strands of faint profound light lingering around the damaged piece of metal. When they subconsciously extended their consciousness and touched the profound light, they felt as if they had fallen into a bottomless abyss and were unable to extricate themselves. There was simply no way to pry into the details of this defective metal piece. No wonder it was able to block Gongsun Wentian's soul attack. Brother Lingtian's defective metal piece is extraordinary. Xian Yuanji, the 9 bodiless celestial from the Yellow Arch Mansion, who was standing next to Duan Lingtian, sighed inwardly as he looked at the defective metal piece in Duan Lingtian's hand. No wonder Brother Lingtian was so calm from the beginning until the end. It seems like Brother Lingtian already knew what was going on. Xian Yuanji could not help but smile wryly when he thought about this. If this Brother Lingtian of his could remind him of all this earlier, he wouldn't have to stand at the side in fear. What's that metal piece in your hand? Gongsun Wentian's eyes were filled with fear when he looked at Duan Lingtian again. At the same time, he realized the ominous feeling he had earlier was right. Duan Lingtian was not deliberately mystifying himself. Duan Lingtian was truly not afraid of Gongsun Wentian's soul attack. Gongsun Wentian could see this as well. As long as Duan Lingtian still had that thing in his hand, no matter how many soul attacks he launched, he would not be able to hurt Duan Lingtian at all. Gongsun Wentian could not help but feel regretful. He should not have coveted Duan Lingtian's technique that could snatch celestial supreme treasures. Otherwise, he would not have fallen into such a passive situation. What's going on? The old ancestor used a soul attack? But how could this Duan Lingtian be fine? Can someone tell me what's going on? Those from the Gongsun clan, and those who weren't from the Gongsun clan weren't able to see what had just happened due to their weaker cultivation, so they had no idea what was going on. However, they could vaguely see something. Duan Lingtian had gained the upper hand. When Gongsun Wentian looked at Duan Lingtian again, there was a hint of fear in his eyes. It was as though Duan Lingtian was a ferocious beast. It's not just Gongsun Wentian. Even the other 9 bodiless celestial from the Gongsun clan seems to be afraid of Duan Lingtian as well. Soon after, someone else noticed this as well. An uproar broke out among the crowd. What's going on? Just as the group of people were feeling extremely puzzled by the situation before them, Duan Lingtian, Gongsun Wentian, a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun clan, who was widely acknowledged as the strongest person in Yanhuang realm, looked at Su Li in his hand as though he was grasping at straws. He threatened Duan Lingtian. Swear on the lightning penalty, oath that you'll never make an enemy of the Gongsun clan. Otherwise I'll kill Su Li right now. Gongsun Wentian glared at Duan Lingtian with bloodshot eyes. He looked like a trapped beast who was desperately trying to break free. However, Duan Lingtian remained calm in the face of Gongsun Wentian's threat. It was as though he would not bat an eyelid, even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. Those who did not know better would think he did not care about Su Li's life at all. You can kill Su Li. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian said calmly. However, if Su Li dies, I'll annihilate the Gongsun clan and kill everyone in the Gongsun clan to accompany him in death. Su Li, you won't blame me, right? Duan Lingtian asked as he looked at Su Li, who was still in Gongsun Wentian's hand. Cough cough. Su Li coughed. Su Li coughed twice. After he caught his breath, an indescribable smile appeared on his face. I don't even have the time to thank you. Why would I blame you? With a top-tier force like the Gongsun clan in Yanhuang realm dying with me, I, Su Li, have no regrets. I'm relieved to hear that. Duan Lingtian nodded. Swoosh. However, as soon as Su Li finished speaking, Gongsun Wentian's expression changed drastically. End of this chapter. Chapter 2569. When Gongsun Wentian discovered Duan Lingtian was not afraid of his soul attack, he knew there was nothing he could do to Duan Lingtian. In fact, he was certain Duan Lingtian would seek revenge on him for holding Su Li hostage. At this time, he could only use Su Li as a shield. However, based on the current situation, it was clear he was naive. Duan Lingtian had threatened him with the lives of the Gongsun family, and threatened to annihilate the Gongsun family if he dared to kill Su Li. If he had known Duan Lingtian was not afraid of his soul attack, he would have thought Duan Lingtian was boasting. However, he was certain Duan Lingtian was not lying. Duan Lingtian was definitely capable of doing so. Duan Lingtian, the ancestor of the Gongsun family, Gongsun Xinyuan, is a heavenly emperor in a Devata realm. He has many powerhouses under his command. If you dare to annihilate the Gongsun family, he won't spare you. Gongsun Wentian glared at Duan Lingtian, intending to use Gongsun Xinyuan, the ancestor of the Gongsun family, to threaten Duan Lingtian. He knew there was no way he could threaten Duan Lingtian with Su Li. After all, Duan Lingtian had tied the lives of the Gongsun family to Su Li. For this reason, he had no choice but to look for another way. Gongsun Xinyuan? Duan Lingtian laughed disdainfully when he heard Gongsun Wentian's words. He said disdainfully, as far as I know, although senior Gongsun Xinyuan came from Yanhuang realm, after he went to the Devata realm, he spread his legacy in many mundane realms. This was what the pagoda spirit of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, Hualao, had told him, let alone the fact that senior Gongsun Xuanyuan's legacy in Yanhuang realm. Even if the Gongsun clan is the only legacy in Yanhuang realm, he might not care about the fate of the Gongsun clan. So what if he really cares? To have your Gongsun clan die with me, I think it's worth it. Besides, I may not necessarily die with the Gongsun family. When Duan Lingtian reached the end of his sentence, he did not seem to mind Gongsun Wentian's threat at all. Whoosh! Seeing that Duan Lingtian had ignored his threat again, Gongsun Wentian's expression changed again. At this moment, the faces of those from the Gongsun clan also darkened. At this moment, even the weaker members of the Gongsun family, who did not know what was going on, realized Gongsun Wentian, the old ancestor of the Gongsun family, and the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm, could not do anything to Duan Lingtian. Otherwise, why would he use Su Li and the ancestor of the Gongsun clan to threaten Duan Lingtian? Only the weak would need to rely on something to threaten the strong. When the strong dealt with the weak, they could rely on their own strength to directly crush them. Why is Gongsun Wentian acting like this in front of Duan Lingtian? It seems like Duan Lingtian isn't afraid of his soul attack at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't be acting like this. If Duan Lingtian isn't afraid of his soul attack, he wouldn't be able to threaten Duan Lingtian. Based on Duan Ling Tian's reaction, it's obvious Duan Ling Tian was unaffected by Gongsun Wen Tian's threat. It doesn't matter if Gongsun Wen Tian threatened Duan Ling Tian with his friends or Gongsun Xianyuan. At this moment, those who were not from the Gongsun clan also realized something. At the same time, they couldn't help but feel shocked. No matter what, Gongsun Wentian was the strongest person in Yanhuang realm. However, he was acting like this in front of an eminent celestial, who was not even 100 years old. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed this was real. Earlier, you said that if Suli dies, you'll annihilate the Gongsun clan and kill everyone in the Gongsun clan to accompany him. Gongsun Wentian looked at Duan Ling Tian and said in a deep voice, "Does this mean that if I let him go, you'll let the Gongsun clan go?" When he said this, Gongsun Wentian only felt his heart suffocating. However, he had no choice but to say it. "You can interpret it that way," Duan Ling Tian said indifferently. He did not seem surprised at all when he heard Gongsun Wentian's words. "Including me?" Gongsun Wentian asked tentatively. Although he did not think it was possible, he could not help but ask. He wanted to know if Duan Ling Tian would let him go if he let Suli go. "You?" Duan Ling Tian was stunned when he heard Gongsun Wentian's words. Then he laughed. "Gongsun Wentian, you've lived for 10,000 years. Do you think I'll let you go today? If you were me, would you let you go?" Gongsun Wentian's expression turned ashen when he heard Duan Ling Tian's words. Although he had already guessed that this would be the outcome, he still found it hard to accept when he actually faced it with his own eyes. He was a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial now. In another 100 years or so, he would have to face the 10th bodiless celestial tribulation. He was 100% confident he would be able to pass the 10th bodiless celestial tribulation and ascend to the Devata realm to become a golden celestial. However, he had lost his chance to ascend to the Devata realm. After cultivating and living for 10,000 years, he cherished his life more than anyone else. He did not expect such a calamity would befall him before he could ascend to the Devata realm. He hated himself. However, he could only hate himself. If he did not covet Duan Lingtian's technique that could steal celestial supreme treasures, none of this would have happened. "Are you and him going to do it yourselves? Or do you want me to do it for you?" Duan Ling Tian looked at Gongsun Wen Tian and Gongsun Hong, the other 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun clan, who was standing next to Gongsun Wen Tian, and asked indifferently, "What's the matter?" As soon as Duan Ling Tian finished speaking, swoosh, 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 swoosh. Apart from Gongsun Wen Tian and Gongsun Hong, the other members of the Gongsun family were shocked as well. Previously, they thought Duan Ling Tian only wanted Gongsun Wen Tian's life and would not pursue the matter any further. At the same time, he would also let the other members of the Gongsun family go. They did not expect Duan Ling Tian would not only want Gongsun Wen Tian's life, but he also wanted Gongsun Hong's life. After all, the Gongsun family only had 2 9 tribulation bodiless celestials. If both of them died, even if the Gongsun family was not reduced to a 2nd-tier force in Yanhuang realm, they would fall from a 1st-tier force to a 2nd-tier force in Yanhuang realm, just like the Tang sect. "Duan Ling Tian, I'm the one who caused this. My junior nephew Gongsun Hong has nothing to do with this." Gongsun Wentian looked at Duan Ling Tian agitatedly, as though he was afraid Duan Ling Tian would implicate Gongsun Hong. "But I heard that there were 2 people who went to the Yellow Larch mansion to kidnap Suli." Duan Ling Tian looked at Gongsun Wentian meaningfully. Gongsun Wentian was about to say something when Duan Ling Tian said coldly, "I'll give both of you 3 breaths. If both of you are still alive after 3 breaths, I'll give both of you a chance. If you're still alive, I'll annihilate the Gongsun family." Duan Ling Tian said he would annihilate the Gongsun family. However, Duan Ling Tian's words were different from when he first arrived. Previously, not many people believed he was capable of such a feat now. Not many people believed he was capable of such a feat. Swoosh, swoosh. Gongsun Wentian and Gongsun Hong's expressions changed again. In the end, Gongsun Wentian was the first to react. After untying Suli, his body trembled violently. Whoosh! A violent energy surged out of his body and devoured him. After a few moments, Gongsun Wentian's aura disappeared completely. From the beginning until the end, Gongsun Wentian did not ask Duan Lingtian to swear on the lightning penalty oath that he would not harm anyone else in the Gongsun family after he and Gongsun Hong's deaths. He knew he was not qualified to ask Duan Lingtian to swear on the lightning penalty oath. He had no other choice. Ancestor. As Gongsun Wentian killed himself on the spot, the members of the Gongsun family could not help but cry out in grief. No, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. When Duan Lingtian's gaze landed on Gongsun Hong's body moved as though he was trying to flee. However, as soon as Gongsun Hong made his move, Duan Lingtian let out a cold snort. The cold snort entered everyone's ears. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The ear-piercing sound of swords whistling in the air rang in everyone's ears. In the next moment, everyone could clearly sense that Gongsun Hong was trying to flee. As soon as Gongsun Hong shouted and tried to flee, the powerful aura that rose from his body was completely destroyed by the sound of swords whistling in the air. It was as though he had never appeared. At this moment, everyone realized something. Gongsun Hong was dead. The Gongsun clan, a first-rate force in Yanhuang realm, had lost 2 nine-tribulation bodiless celestials they relied on. If the Gongsun family was described as a tiger in the past, then the current Gongsun family was a toothless tiger. Let's go. After killing Gongsun Hong, Duan Lingtian flew to Su Li's side. Su Li's body was weak, but he had barely recovered some of his strength. Duan Lingtian brought Su Li to Xian Yuanji's side. After bidding farewell to Xian Yuanji, they prepared to leave. Good. Xian Yuanji was still in shock from the death of the 2 nine-tribulation bodiless celestials from the Gongsun family. He only regained his senses when Duan Lingtian appeared in front of him. When he regained his senses, a hint of respect could be seen in his eyes as he looked at Duan Lingtian. This was a respect that came from the bottom of his heart. Chapter 2570. Although Xian Yuanji had heard that Duan Lingtian had killed a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Heavenly Wave Mansion, he did not witness it with his own eyes. Although he had seen the mirror image talisman, it was not as shocking as witnessing it in person. Earlier, he had witnessed Duan Lingtian killing Gongsun Wentian, the old ancestor of the Gongsun family, and the strongest person in Yanhuang realm, and the other 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family, Gongsun Hong. Xian Yuanji was also greatly shocked by what he saw. In his opinion, Duan Lingtian was a powerhouse who was superior to 9 tribulation bodiless celestials in the mundane realms. Prior to this, he had thought Duan Lingtian had a weak soul and would be at a disadvantage if he encountered a bodiless celestial who had cultivated the soul congregation embodiment technique. However, he now knew that even a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial who had cultivated the soul congregation embodiment technique would not be able to harm Duan Lingtian at all. In fact, the 9 tribulation bodiless celestial would not even be able to get close to Duan Lingtian. Brother Lingtian, why didn't you tell me earlier that you're not afraid of Gongsun Wentian's soul attack? Do you know how worried I was at first? I was worried you wouldn't be able to withstand Gongsun Wentian's soul attack. Xian Yuanji smiled wryly as he spoke to Duan Lingtian, after leaving the mystical ancient galaxy with Duan Lingtian and Su Li. Old brother Ji, don't you trust me? Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. It's not that I don't trust you. It's just that I find it hard to imagine an eminent celestial like you would not be afraid of the soul attack of a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial who has cultivated the soul congregation embodiment technique. Is the broken metal piece you used to block Gongsun Wentian's soul attack a soul defense celestial supreme treasure? Xian Yuanji could not help but ask curiously. A soul defense celestial supreme treasure? What kind of celestial supreme treasure is that? Duan Lingtian was confused. You don't know? Does that mean the broken metal piece in your hand is not a soul-defending immortal supreme treasure? Seeing the blank expression on Duan Lingtian's face, Xian Yuanji was also stunned. I obtained this by chance. but it shouldn't be an immortal supreme treasure. Duan Lingtian took out the incomplete metal piece that was surrounded by a mysterious light and gave it a few glances. In the end, he did not sense any aura of an immortal supreme treasure from it. It did not seem like an immortal supreme treasure at all. Even though it's not an immortal supreme treasure, it can still block the soul attack of a 9 tribulation loose celestial. This thing is not simple. Xian Yuanji could not help but sigh. At the same time, Xian Yuanji seemed to have recalled something as he said, "However, I really didn't expect Gongsun Wentian would be so cooperative and choose to commit suicide. He didn't even test your strength to see if you're as strong as the rumors say. He's a smart man," Duan Lingtian said. "Moreover, the scene of me killing the 9 tribulation loose celestial from the Heavenly Wave Mansion was recorded in a mirror image talisman. The mirror image talisman can be duplicated. For this reason, Gongsun Wentian must have seen the scene of me killing the 9 tribulation loose celestial from the Heavenly Wave Mansion. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so cooperative. However, compared to Gongsun Hong who tried to escape, Gongsun Wentian is more respectable. At the very least, he's willing to die for the Gongsun clan." A hint of respect flashed in Duan Lingtian's eyes when he reached the end of his sentence. It did not matter how much Gongsun Wentian had crossed the line, and how much he deserved to die. Just the fact that Gongsun Wentian, the old ancestor of the Gongsun clan, was willing to die for the Gongsun clan was enough to earn Duan Lingtian's respect. After all, not everyone was capable of such a feat. Even Gongsun Hong, the old ancestor of the Gongsun clan, was not capable of such a feat. "I forgot about this. Even I have seen the scene of you killing the 9 tribulation loose celestial from the Heavenly Wave Mansion. How could he not have seen it?" Xian Yuanji nodded. "Elder Su Li, are you all right?" At the same time, Xian Yuanji found that Su Li, who was recovering by himself, just opened his eyes. He couldn't help but ask with concern, "I'm fine." Su Li shook his head lightly as he looked at Duan Lingtian. He smiled faintly, but did not say any words of gratitude. After all, there was no need for words between him and Duan Lingtian. There was no need for words to express their feelings. Duan Lingtian brought Su Li and Xian Yuanji back to the Yellow Arch Mansion and stayed there for the time being. As time passed, news of Duan Lingtian's actions in the mystical ancient galaxy began to spread like wildfire. In fact, news of Duan Lingtian killing the old ancestor of the Heavenly Wave Mansion spread faster than news of Duan Lingtian killing the old ancestor of the 9 tribulation loose celestial. This was because Gongsun Wentian, the old ancestor of the Gongsun clan, and the strongest person in Yanhuang realm, was involved in this matter. Have you heard? After killing the old ancestor of the Heavenly Wave Mansion, a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial, Duan Lingtian from the Saint Province realm is stirring up trouble in our Yanhuang realm. Moreover, he's stirring up trouble in the mystical ancient galaxy ruled by the Gongsun family. The Gongsun clan is much stronger than the Heavenly Wave Mansion. One of the 2 9 tribulation loose celestials from the Gongsun clan is the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm. Isn't Duan Lingtian seeking death by stirring up trouble in the mystical ancient galaxy? That's right. As far as I know, the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm, Gongsun Wentian, the 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun clan, is also a bodiless celestial who has mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique. In terms of physical attacks, Duan Lingtian is stronger than any 9 tribulation bodiless celestial in Yanhuang realm. However, he's no match for soul attacks. It's not just his soul attack that's lacking. Even his soul defense is unable to withstand a single blow from Gongsun Wentian's soul attack. When news of Duan Lingtian's actions began to spread, those who were unaware of what had happened thought he would be courting death if he offended Gongsun Wentian, the old ancestor of the Gongsun clan, who was a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial, had gone to the mystical ancient galaxy to stir up trouble. When the news kept coming in, and they understood the ins and outs of the matter, they were all completely dumbfounded. Duan Lingtian isn't afraid of Gongsun Wentian's soul attack at all? He's just an eminent celestial who's not even 100 years old. But he easily blocked Gongsun Wentian's soul attack? What exactly was that piece of metal that he threw out at that time? Could it be a soul defense celestial supreme treasure? Only a soul defense celestial supreme treasure would be able to help him block Gongsun Wentian's soul attack. I didn't expect him to have a soul defense celestial supreme treasure as well. What's even more surprising is that Duan Lingtian didn't go to the mystical ancient galaxy to stir up trouble, but the 2-9 tribulation bodiless celestials from the Gongsun clan coveted Duan Lingtian's technique that could snatch celestial supreme treasures. That's why they provoked Duan Lingtian first. I'm afraid they didn't expect that they would lose their lives over a technique that they might not even be able to master. Wherever the news spread, there was an uproar everywhere. The strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm, Gongsun Wentian, had died just like that. Moreover, he had died in the hands of an eminent celestial who was not even 100 years old. What shocked them even more was that Duan Lingtian was not an ordinary person. Duan Lingtian, an eminent celestial who was not even 100 years old, was not afraid of a bodiless celestial's soul attack. Moreover, he could easily kill a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial. Duan Lingtian. His name is destined to be recorded in the history of Yanhuang realm. Of course, he's the shining star of an era in Yanhuang realm. With his cultivation base, he killed 3 9 tribulation bodiless celestials in Yanhuang realm. Moreover, one of the 9 tribulation bodiless celestials had cultivated the soul congregation embodiment technique. He was the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm. Similar rumors spread all over Yanhuang realm, and they were out of control. The Yellow Varch mansion was located in a remote area, so news about it was not as spread as other forces. However, Duan Lingtian only heard about it after some time had passed. However, he wasn't surprised by this. He only felt that it was within his expectations. After all, Gongsun Wentian was widely acknowledged as the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm. It was only natural for Yanhuang realm to be shocked by his death. As the person who had forced Gongsun Wentian to his death, it was only natural that news about him would spread like wildfire. Today, Duan Lingtian was staying in his room. Just like usual, he was looking at the defective metal piece that was surrounded by a profound light out of boredom. However, he was unable to discover the profundity within it. All of a sudden, HM? Duan Lingtian's eyes widened as though he had sensed something. At that moment, he could clearly sense a mysterious power coming from all directions, enveloping his body. It gave him a very strange feeling, as if it wanted to take him somewhere. Moreover, the mysterious energy contained an aura similar to celestial origin energy. Celestial ascension force? This was the first thought that appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind. Apart from that, he could not explain what was happening to him. Duan Lingtian instinctively mobilized the energy in his body to resist the energy that came from all directions. However, he discovered the energy was not only growing stronger, but it was also completely ignoring his energy. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian felt his body going numb from the energy. It felt as though he was about to lose consciousness. It seems like it's really the celestial ascension force. Am I going to ascend? When Duan Lingtian recalled the time when Tang Xiaoxiao was pulled into the celestial ascension force, he was certain this energy was the celestial ascension force. Chapter 2571. Duan Lingtian had long prepared himself for the possibility of ascension. This was especially true when Yin Qingyan had appeared and imprisoned his family and friends, forcing Kuer to leave him. He could not wait to ascend to the Devata realm, because that was the only way he could hope to save Kuer, his family and friends. Otherwise, how could he rescue them if he could not even ascend to the Devata realm? Naturally, he knew that even if he ascended to the Devata realm, it did not mean he would be able to rescue Kuer and the others. However, at the very least, he would be able to break through the shackles of an eminent celestial and become a true celestial in the Devata realm. In the mundane realm, Duan Lingtian's cultivation base had reached its limit when he became an eminent celestial. If he wanted to raise his cultivation base, he would have to ascend to the Devata realm. The celestial ascension force is finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Duan Lingtian was excited when he realized the force that enveloped him was the celestial ascension force that would help him ascend to the Devata realm. It seems like the celestial ascension force will help me ascend to the Devata realm, Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he recalled the scene of Tang Xiaoxiao ascending to the Devata realm. I'll have to inform Su Li and old brother Ji before I ascend. Otherwise, they might think I've gone missing. With this thought in mind, Duan Lingtian raised his hand and took out 2 communication jade tokens. After leaving a message on them, he channeled his energy into them, causing them to transform into 2 streaks of light that shot out of his room. Duan Lingtian felt the celestial ascension force that enveloped him was getting denser and denser. I'm about to ascend. It was not difficult for him to realize he was about to ascend to the Devata realm. At this moment, he could feel the celestial ascension force tugging at him. The immortal ascension force that enveloped him was pulling at him, as if it wanted to take him somewhere. Duan Lingtian was stunned when the celestial ascension force tugged at him. This was because he realized that after his celestial ascension force grew stronger, it suddenly became very, very weak. At the same time, the celestial ascension force that enveloped him had also weakened. As for the celestial ascension force that was trying to bring him somewhere, it had completely disappeared. What's going on? Is this not the celestial ascension force? At this moment, Duan Lingtian felt as though he had been made a fool of. He even thought he had made a huge mistake. However, in the next moment he denied his own thoughts. It's devouring the celestial ascension force. When Duan Lingtian finally regained his senses, he was shocked to discover that Duan Lingtian's aura was extremely strong. The defective metal piece in his hand had suddenly emitted a devouring energy. It was like a gluttonous child that was constantly devouring the celestial ascension force that enveloped him. It was as though the celestial ascension force was a delicacy to it. The celestial ascension force continued to envelop Duan Lingtian, trying to bring Duan Lingtian out of the mundane realm and into the Devata realm. However, before it could bring Duan Lingtian out of the mundane realm, the defective metal piece in Duan Lingtian's hand continued to devour the celestial ascension force, preventing it from bringing Duan Lingtian away. In just a blink of an eye, a dozen breaths had passed. It's not done yet. Duan Lingtian could feel the celestial ascension force had never stopped enveloping him. However, even if the celestial ascension force did not stop, it still could not help him leave the mundane realm and ascend to the Devata realm. This was because the defective metal piece in his hand would mercilessly devour the celestial ascension force whenever it was about to bring him out of the mundane realm. Duan Lingtian was thoroughly frightened by the defective metal piece's appetite. This is a bottomless pit. Duan Lingtian smiled wryly. After a while, a thought appeared in his mind. He tried to put the defective metal piece into his spatial ring. However, he discovered the celestial ascension force was not working at all. It was as though the spatial ring did not exist when the defective metal piece devoured the celestial ascension force. Brother Lingtian, are you going to ascend? At this moment, Xian Yuanji, the old ancestor of the Gongsun family, said anxiously, I'm sorry, Duan Lingtian, but I'm sorry. Old brother Ji. Duan Lingtian smiled wryly as he walked out of the room. He flew to Xian Yuanji's side with a wry smile on his face. This is the celestial ascension force? When Duan Lingtian came out of the room, Xian Yuanji's attention was attracted by the almost transparent energy that shrouded Duan Lingtian. He could sense it. This energy did not belong to the mundane realm. Even a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial like him did not possess such pure celestial origin energy. Therefore, there was only one possibility left. This was the celestial ascension force that would bring Duan Lingtian out of the mundane realm to the Devata realm. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded. I thought you'd been taken away by the celestial ascension force. I didn't expect you to still be here. As Xian Yuanji spoke, he couldn't help but frown. However, as far as I know, the celestial ascension force will bring an eminent celestial out of the mundane realm to the Devata realm in just a blink of an eye. Did you sense the arrival of the celestial ascension force in advance? Didn't it just arrive? Xian Yuanji looked at Duan Lingtian in confusion. No. Duan Lingtian shook his head with a wry smile on his face. Then, he raised his hand and took the defective metal piece out of his spatial ring. It's because this thing has been devouring the celestial ascension force. Otherwise, I would have been brought to the Devata realm by the celestial ascension force. What's this thing? Xian Yuanji looked at the defective metal piece in Duan Lingtian's hand again in shock. He had never heard of anything in the mundane realm that could devour the celestial ascension force and delay an eminent celestial from ascending to the Devata realm. If I want to leave the mundane realm and ascend to the Devata realm, I'm afraid I'll have to wait until it's full. Duan Lingtian smiled wryly. Based on the current situation, that's indeed the case. Xian Yuanji nodded. He also felt that Duan Lingtian could only wait. At the same time, he could not help but feel relieved for Duan Lingtian. Fortunately, the celestial ascension force appears continuously. If only a certain amount appears and is devoured by it, how are you going to ascend? Brother Ji, now that you mention it, it's indeed worth rejoicing. Duan Lingtian broke out in cold sweat when he heard Xian Yuanji's words. If only a certain amount of the celestial ascension force appeared and led him to leave the mundane realm and ascend to the Devata realm. If the defective metal piece devoured the celestial ascension force, he would not be able to leave the mundane realm and ascend to the Devata realm. Duan Lingtian, are you going to ascend to the Devata realm? Su Li's voice rang from afar. Similar to Xian Yuanji, he had rushed over as soon as he received Duan Lingtian's message. However, since he was slow, he only arrived now. Yes, I'm going to ascend to the Devata realm. After Su Li arrived, Duan Lingtian looked at the defective metal piece in his hand with a bitter smile on his face. He thought he would not be able to see his good friend before he left the mundane realm and ascended to the Devata realm. He did not expect the defective metal piece in his hand would be so considerate and give him this opportunity. What's going on? At this moment, Su Li also noticed that something was amiss. When he learned about what had happened, he looked at the defective metal piece in Duan Lingtian's hand and said with a smile, Duan Lingtian, the metal piece in your hand has been devouring the celestial ascension force for about 15 minutes. The fact that it's able to do this means it's not simple. In fact, the longer it lasts now, the more complicated it is. Therefore, you don't have to worry. You can even hope that it'll last longer. Naturally, Su Li's words were meant to comfort Duan Lingtian. Although Su Li's words were meant to comfort Duan Lingtian, he did have a point. You're right, Duan Lingtian said with a sigh. As the saying went, you're in the middle of a situation but you're unaware of it. This was exactly what Duan Lingtian was feeling earlier. However, now that Su Li had reminded him, he was no longer in a hurry. The bitter smile on his face disappeared and was replaced by a calm expression. Duan Lingtian, now that you've ascended to the Devata realm, I'm afraid we won't be able to see each other again. Su Li sighed as he looked at Duan Lingtian. A hint of reluctance could be seen in his eyes. Don't worry, as long as we're fated we'll meet again. Even if we're not fated, when one of us is strong enough to become famous in the Devata realm, the other person will naturally learn of our whereabouts. At that time, we'll be able to meet again. Duan Lingtian smiled. Then, I'll wait for you to become famous in the Devata realm. I hope that by the time I ascend to the Devata realm, you'll have already made a name for yourself. If that's the case, we'll be able to meet again as soon as I ascend to the Devata realm. Su Li smiled. It won't take more than a few years for you to ascend to the Devata realm. It won't be easy for you to make a name for yourself in the Devata realm in just a few years. Duan Lingtian glared angrily at Su Li. For others, it's just wishful thinking. However, that might not be the case for you, Duan Lingtian. Su Li looked at Duan Lingtian deeply before he said confidently, Duan Lingtian. In my opinion, Duan Lingtian, you're someone who's good at creating miracles. End of chapter. Chapter 2572. In the Heavenly Wave Mansion in the Heavenly Wave Galaxy. Ever since they learned that the purple-clad young man, Duan Lingtian, who had killed their old ancestor, a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial, was only an eminent celestial, everyone in the heavenly wave mansion was frustrated and aggrieved. They felt that their old ancestor, a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial, had died unjustly. If their old ancestor had known that Duan Lingtian was an eminent celestial, he would have been able to kill Duan Lingtian with a soul attack. Even if Duan Lingtian had made a move in time, their old ancestor would have perished together with Duan Lingtian. They would not have ended up in this situation where their old ancestor had been killed while Duan Lingtian was still alive and well. This matter was like a thorn in the hearts of the people from the heavenly wave mansion. They would often feel frustrated and aggrieved whenever they thought about it. It wasn't until the news that shook the entire Yanhuang realm that the thorn in their hearts finally disappeared. Duan Lingtian is only an eminent celestial, but he managed to block the soul attack of Gongsun Wentian, a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family, and he even forced Gongsun Wentian to commit suicide. Isn't Gongsun Wentian, a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family, widely acknowledged as the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm? It's him. Heavens! Even the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm, who has mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique, and is even stronger than our old ancestor, couldn't kill Duan Lingtian. Not only that, but he was even forced to commit suicide. Does this mean our old ancestor didn't die in vain? That seems to be the case. Rumor has it that the old ancestor from the Gongsun family heard that Duan Lingtian had killed our old ancestor. That's why he wanted to snatch celestial supreme treasures from Duan Lingtian. That's why he kidnapped Duan Lingtian's friends and tried to use Duan Lingtian's weak soul to force him to submit. However, he didn't expect that the soul attack he thought would kill Duan Lingtian would fail to harm Duan Lingtian at all. What a pity! What a pity! At this moment, the group of people from Heavenly Wave Prefecture no longer felt that their old ancestor's death was unjust and unjust. After all, even Gongsun Wentian, a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial from the Gongsun family, who was stronger than their old ancestor, and the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm, was forced to commit suicide by Duan Lingtian, even though he was fully prepared. Based on this, one could easily imagine how terrifying Duan Lingtian was. What kind of monster is Duan Lingtian? He managed to defeat the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm with just his cultivation base. Is there anyone in the mundane realm who's a match for him? The people from Heavenly Wave Mansion who no longer felt wrong shifted their attention to Duan Lingtian's heaven-defying strength. Tang sect in the Thousand Opportunities Galaxy. News of Duan Lingtian killing Gongsun Wentian, a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial, and Gongsun Hong, a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial, in the mystical ancient galaxy spread to the Tang sect as time passed. It's been many years since a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial was killed in Yanhuang realm. Who knew Duan Lingtian, an eminent celestial from the Saint Province realm, would kill three nine-tribulation bodiless celestials in Yanhuang realm in just a few years? One of them is the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm. Who's Duan Lingtian? How can he be so freakish? I heard Duan Lingtian has appeared in Tang sect before. Moreover, he's a friend of Tang Xiao, the strongest powerhouse among the younger generation in Tang sect. Is that true? I think it's true. I think I've heard someone mention it before. Everyone in Tang sect was shocked as well. That Duan Lingtian actually has such strength. When Tang Chong, the sect leader of Tang sect, received the news, he was stunned for a long time before he regained his senses. After regaining his senses, an indescribable expression of shock appeared on his face as expected. When he heard Duan Lingtian had killed the old ancestor of Skywave Mansion, a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial, he was already shocked. However, at the same time, he felt Duan Lingtian must have been lucky to be able to kill the old ancestor of Skywave Mansion. After all, Duan Lingtian was a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial who had mastered the soul congregation embodiment technique. Now that he heard the news from the mystical ancient galaxy, he realized Duan Lingtian was not weak at all. In fact, Duan Lingtian was not afraid of the old ancestor of Skywave Mansion's soul attack at all. After all, he could easily withstand the soul attack of the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm, and had even forced the old ancestor to commit suicide. Is Xiao Zhao's friend the reincarnation of a celestial god? Otherwise, how could he possess such terrifying strength when he's just an eminent celestial? Tang Chong could not calm down for a long time. On planet Satel in the Kos Galaxy, this was the transit station of the last interstellar transportation formation that Duan Lingtian had used when he was returning to Earth. It was considered a relatively remote galaxy in Yanhuang realm. This projection was brought back by a friend of mine from an interstellar merchant. It was recorded by a cultivator using a mirror image talisman. Look, doesn't the person in the projection look familiar? Soon enough, a person from the Kos Galaxy sent the projection to 10 people, 100 people, and 1,000 people. Soon enough, the entire Kos Galaxy was shocked. Heavens! Isn't this purple-clad young man the cultivator who destroyed the disaster-level battleship and killed the patriarch of the Garnier clan? It's said that the old man he killed was the old ancestor of Skywave Mansion, one of the top forces in Yanhuang realm. He was a powerful 9 tribulation bodiless celestial. A 9 tribulation bodiless celestial? The kind of person who stands at the peak of Yanhuang realm and can destroy an apocalypse-level battleship with just a flick of his finger? How could he kill such a person? A 9 tribulation bodiless celestial alone is enough to destroy an SSS-grade technological civilization. However, this purple-clad cultivator is capable of killing a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial? Fortunately, he didn't vent his anger on the Garnier clan and the people of the Kos Galaxy. Otherwise, he would have been able to destroy the entire Kos Galaxy. The people in the Kos Galaxy had only received news that Duan Lingtian had killed the old ancestor of Skywave Mansion. However, they were still unaware of this. After a while, the news of the purple-clad cultivator killing the strongest powerhouse in Yanhuang realm would spread like wildfire. At that time, the Kos Galaxy would be shaken again. In the galaxy where the Yellow Tharch Mansion was located. In the Yellow Tharch Mansion, it's finally full. After waiting for 3 days and 3 nights, Duan Lingtian discovered the speed at which the defective metal piece was devouring the celestial ascension force had slowed down. What's this defective metal piece? At this moment, Duan Lingtian could feel that the defective metal piece in his hand was not simple. What a joke! How could something that could devour the celestial ascension force for 3 days and 3 nights and delay his ascension to the Devata realm be simple? Brother Lingtian, Duan Lingtian, Xian Yuanji, and Suli rushed over after receiving Duan Lingtian's message. Based on the fact that the speed at which it's devouring the celestial ascension force is slowing down, it'll stop devouring the celestial ascension force in a dozen breaths at most. At that time, I'll have to ascend. When Duan Lingtian saw Xian Yuanji and Suli, he smiled faintly and said, Old brother Ji Suli, I'll wait for both of you in the Devata realm. Brother Lingtian, Xian Yuanji said solemnly, the Devata realm is different from the mundane realms. You might be at the peak in the mundane realms. However, in the Devata realms, even with your strength, you'll only be barely passable. In the Devata realms, there are many golden celestials who are stronger than you, great overarching golden celestials, and even stronger beings than great overarching golden celestials. For this reason, you have to be careful in the Devata realm. As a member of the Yellow Tharch Mansion, Xian Yuanji had read many ancient manuals passed down from generation to generation in the Yellow Tharch Mansion. For this reason, he had a certain understanding of the Devata realm. All right. Duan Lingtian nodded. He was mentally prepared for this. In the mundane realms, Duan Lingtian might be considered one of the strongest in the mundane realms, but in the Devata realms his strength was nothing. Duan Lingtian, take care. Suli was a man of few words, but the way he looked at Duan Lingtian was enough to show his reluctance to part with him. He and Duan Lingtian had known each other since they were young, and he knew very well how rare it was for them to be able to be together after so long. For this reason he treasured their friendship. All right. Duan Lingtian nodded solemnly. His feelings were similar to Su Li's. A dozen breaths passed in just a blink of an eye. It's finally eaten its fill. Just as Duan Lingtian had expected, the defective metal piece in his hand stopped devouring the celestial ascension force after a dozen breaths. Whoosh! The celestial ascension force that shrouded him grew denser and denser. In the end, he lost consciousness under the influence of the celestial ascension force. Only his eyes and his consciousness were clear. Whoosh! All of a sudden, Duan Lingtian's vision blurred, and Xian Yuanji and Su Li's figures blurred. After a few moments, both of their figures disappeared, replaced by darkness. It was as though day had turned into night in just a blink of an eye. All of this happened without warning. Gradually, Duan Lingtian discovered that his consciousness was beginning to blur as well. Until Chapter 2573. The Devata realms were just a general term. In the colossal world, there were 81 Devata realms. At the same time, in the colossal world, countless mundane realms surrounded the 81 Devata realms like stars surrounding the moon. It was as though the 81 Devata realms were the supreme emperors. Generally speaking, people from the mundane realms, whether they were eminent celestials or 9 tribulation bodiless celestials, would ascend to the Devata realms nearby. For example, since the mundane realm, Yanhuang realm, was adjacent to the Jade Emperor Heaven, the eminent celestials and 9 tribulation bodiless celestials from Yanhuang realm would usually ascend to the Jade Emperor Heaven. However, nothing was absolute. Once there was an upheaval in the colossal world, the space between the mundane realms and the Devata realms would be distorted as well. At that time, it was impossible for people who ascended from the mundane realms to ascend to the Devata realms adjacent to their mundane realms. Naturally, the colossal world would not always experience upheavals. There would only be upheavals once every 10,000 years, and they would last for 1,000 years. In other words, the chances were very slim. There was only a 1 in 10 chance of encountering an upheaval in the colossal world. Needless to say, Duan Lingtian's luck was pretty good. The upheaval that would last for 1,000 years would only occur once every 10,000 years in the Great Thousand World. It had started less than a year ago, and would continue for another 1,000 years. For this reason, the chances of Duan Lingtian ascending to the Jade Emperor Heaven were extremely slim. When Duan Lingtian was shrouded by the celestial ascension force, and was pulled out of the mundane realm to ascend to the Devata realms, his consciousness had disappeared. He had no idea what had happened in between. When he regained consciousness, he discovered he was in a pool shrouded in white mist. As soon as Duan Lingtian regained consciousness, he began to look around and discovered he was in a pool as big as a football field on Earth. Not far from him, more and more figures appeared one after another. After these figures appeared, their eyes were tightly closed, as if they had fallen into a deep sleep. Apart from that, Duan Lingtian also noticed that many people in the surroundings had opened their eyes as well. It was apparent that some of them had opened their eyes before he did. This is the Devata realm? I've ascended. I've finally ascended. So this is the heavenly celestial stage? Indeed, it's different from before. The celestial origin energy in my body has completely transformed into celestial origin energy. It seems like it's all thanks to the celestial ascension pool. I've long heard that once eminent celestials ascend to the Devata realms, they'll enter the celestial ascension pool in the Devata realms. They'll only regain their consciousness after becoming heavenly celestials. I don't even know when I became a celestial. Celestial immortal? This is a celestial immortal? Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian perked up his ears and heard a commotion in his surroundings. It seemed like those who had regained their consciousness were talking. Heavenly celestial? Upon hearing these people's words, Duan Lingtian instinctively looked into his body. Indeed, he discovered the celestial origin energy in his body had completely transformed into celestial origin energy. His cultivation base had also become a heavenly celestial without him realizing it. Also, I don't have any clothes on me. Duan Lingtian discovered he was completely naked. Fortunately, the white mist in the celestial ascension pool had covered most of his body, so he was not exposed. Why do they have clothes on them? At the same time, Duan Lingtian discovered the people around him were all wearing clothes. However, upon closer inspection, Duan Lingtian discovered something was amiss. The clothes on these people's bodies were all condensed from celestial origin energy. They were not clothes made of cloth. As for them, their clothes are made of celestial origin energy mixed with saint origin energy, Duan Lingtian said. Soon after, Duan Lingtian discovered something else. The people around him who had their eyes closed and hadn't regained consciousness were also wearing clothes. They weren't naked like him. Moreover, the celestial origin energy and saint origin energy they're wearing seems to be constantly changing. The saint origin energy is constantly being assimilated by the celestial origin energy. I'm afraid it won't be long before their clothes that are made of celestial origin energy and saint origin energy turn into clothes that are made of celestial origin energy. It seems like they were prepared before they ascended. However, I didn't know about this. Duan Lingtian was not stupid, so it was not difficult for him to figure this out. Brother Ji, I can't believe he didn't warn me. Duan Lingtian smiled wryly as he circulated the celestial origin energy in his body and transformed it into a purple robe that he wore. He knew very well. As an old man in the Yellow Arch Mansion, Xian Yuanji must have known that when one ascended, one would not be able to bring anything from the mundane realms, including clothes from the mundane realms. One would have to use one's celestial origin energy to form clothes to protect oneself from being exposed in the celestial ascension pool in the Devata realms. However, Duan Lingtian was unaware that Xian Yuanji had told him not to. In his opinion, this was common knowledge for those who were about to leave the mundane realms to ascend to the Devata realms. Therefore, there was no need for him to remind Duan Lingtian. These people must be like me. They must have just ascended to the Devata realms. At this moment, it was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to figure this out. Previously, he had heard from Hua Lao, the pagoda spirit of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, that those who ascended to the Devata realms would appear in the Celestial Ascension Pool. The Celestial Ascension Pool was used to help those who ascended to the Devata realms become celestials. Apart from that, once one left the Celestial Ascension Pool, one would not be able to enter it again. This was because the Celestial Ascension Pool was only accessible to eminent celestials and 9 tribulation bodiless celestials who had just ascended to a Devata realm and whose energy had not completely transformed into celestial origin energy. There's not a single woman among these people who have just ascended. Duan Lingtian studied his surroundings and discovered that there was not a single woman among the group of ascended to the Devata realms. Surprisingly, there was not a single woman among the group of ascenders around him. They were all men like him, and their appearances were all different. Some were dressed sloppily, some were dressed plainly, and some were dressed smartly. Some were tall, some were short, some were fat, and some were skinny. There were young men, middle-aged men, and old men who seemed to be in their 70s. It seems like there aren't many female cultivators in the mundane realms who can ascend to the Devata realms. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. He could understand why this was the case. After all, most women were not as talented as men when it came to cultivation. Naturally, this was only limited to women. There were a small number of women who were much more talented than men. When Duan Lingtian finally regained his senses, he was delighted that he had become a heavenly celestial. What's all this noise? Shut up, all of you. All of a sudden, an impatient voice rang from the edge of the Celestial Ascension Pool. The voice seemed to contain magic as it drowned out the commotion in the Celestial Ascension Pool. When the group of people, including Duan Lingtian, heard the voice, they turned to look at the source of the voice. They saw a silver-clad figure standing in front of them. They saw a young man dressed in silver armor, standing next to the Celestial Ascension Pool. The young man had an ordinary appearance, but he had a sturdy build. His eyes were as large as copper gongs as he looked at the group of people who had just regained consciousness after becoming heavenly celestials in the Celestial Ascension Pool, including Duan Lingtian. After a moment of silence, One of the young men dressed in embroidered robes, standing in the celestial ascension pool, sneered. "Who do you think you are? How dare you call yourself father in front of me? It's none of your business what we're talking about." Many people in the celestial ascension pool nodded in agreement when they heard the young man's words. At the same time, they looked at the sturdy young man dressed in silver armor, standing next to the celestial ascension pool with a mocking smile on their faces. Among the people standing in the celestial ascension pool, which one of them was not a prodigy in their respective mundane realms? The fact that they were able to pass the heavenly tribulation and ascend to the Devata realms was enough to prove their innate talent and strength. For this reason, all of them had their own pride. How could they allow someone to shout at them? Ha ha ha. As soon as the young man finished speaking, a burst of unbridled laughter rang from outside the celestial ascension pool. A moment later, another young man in silver armor appeared before everyone's eyes like a ghost. Unlike the sturdy young man dressed in silver armor, this young man dressed in silver armor had a medium build and a handsome face. As soon as he appeared, he looked at the sturdy young man dressed in silver armor and said mockingly, "Wang Wei, it seems like you're regressing as you age. Even an ascender dares to shout at you now?" Feng Qing, the sturdy young man dressed in silver armor, Wang Wei's expression darkened even more when he heard Feng Qing's words. He glared at Feng Qing before he looked at the young man dressed in embroidered robes. His eyes were burning with anger as he said, "Brat, if you have the guts, stay in the celestial ascension pool for the rest of your life. If you dare to come out, What can you do if I come out?" The young man dressed in embroidered robes interrupted Wang Wei and flew out of the celestial ascension pool. It was as though he was a newborn calf who was not afraid of tigers. This fellow is in trouble. Chapter 2574. Earlier, when the silver-armored young man, Feng Qing, laughed, Duanling Tian's gaze instantly shifted to the edge of the pool. He wanted to see who the person who laughed was. Unfortunately, even with his full attention, he could only catch a glimpse of Feng Qing's afterimage before he appeared. After witnessing Feng Qing's speed, Duanling Tian came to a realization. Feng Qing's strength was not simple at all. If his strength was simple, how could he be so fast? After all, Duanling Tian was no longer an eminent celestial in the mundane realm. He had ascended to a Devata realm and became a heavenly celestial in the celestial ascension pool. His cultivation base and strength were much stronger than when he was in the mundane realms. Naturally, his standards had improved as well. Feng Qing's speed is comparable to an ordinary nine-tribulation bodiless celestial. Duanling Tian thought to himself. Duanling Tian knew Feng Qing's speed was comparable to an ordinary nine-tribulation bodiless celestial. Although Feng Qing's speed was comparable to an ordinary nine-tribulation bodiless celestial, it did not mean Feng Qing's cultivation base was at the peak of the heavenly celestial stage. Bodiless celestials in the mundane realm did not have a physical body and relied on their souls to survive. For this reason, they could not cast any divine abilities or celestial methods from Devata realms. On the other hand, celestials in the Devata realms did not have such restrictions. For this reason, those who possessed speed comparable to ordinary nine-tribulation bodiless celestials in the mundane realm might not necessarily be at the peak of the heavenly celestial stage. Some of them might be slightly weaker. However, for someone who was as fast as a nine-tribulation bodiless celestial in the mundane realms, even if their cultivation base was not at the peak of the heavenly celestial realm, they were not someone who had just ascended to the Devata realms could compare to. Although Wang Wei did not display his strength, Duanling Tian was certain Feng Qing's opponent was Feng Qing. Based on the confrontation between Feng Qing and Wang Wei, Duanling Tian could tell Feng Qing's strength was comparable to Wang Wei's. Feng Qing was certain Feng Qing, and Wang Wei's strength was on par with each other. In other words, he was certain Wang Wei was as strong as Feng Qing. When Duanling Tian saw the young man in embroidered robes fly out of the immortal ascension pool and appear in front of Wang Wei, he vaguely realized that the young man in embroidered robes was about to suffer. As Duanling Tian's eyes flashed, Wang Wei attacked with lightning speed. Bang! His palm struck out mercilessly. It destroyed the celestial origin energy that the young man in embroidered robes had just put up. Then it landed on the young man's shoulder. Crack! Ah! A crisp and ear-piercing sound, accompanied by an incomparably shrill scream, rang out. Under the gazes of everyone present, one of the arm of the young man in embroidered clothes was directly torn off by Wang Wei's palm strike. Moreover, it brought about an expanse of blood in the air that continued to dye the ground, dazzling and dazzling. The severed arm also fell into the blood on the ground, splashing blood everywhere. Just as the pale-faced young man in embroidered robes was about to stop the bleeding from his severed shoulder, the young man in embroidered robes suddenly stopped the bleeding. Boom! Wang Wei waved his hand, and a vast amount of celestial origin energy surged out of his hand toward the severed arm of the young man in embroidered robes. It was clear Wang Wei intended to destroy the arm of the young man in embroidered robes. If the young man in embroidered robes could pick up the severed arm, he would be able to reattach it for a short time. After that, he would be able to recover after some rest. However, once the arm was destroyed, it would be impossible to reattach it. Although there were some medicinal pills in the Devata realms that could regrow severed limbs, they were extremely rare and expensive. Not everyone could obtain them. No. Wang Wei ignored the young man in embroidered robes and continued to destroy the severed arm of the young man in embroidered robes. How dare you destroy my right arm? Just you wait. Just you wait. I won't let you get away with this. I won't let you get away with this. The young man in embroidered robes' face turned even paler when he saw his severed arm being destroyed. However, his eyes were wide open and filled with blood and hatred. He stared at Wang Wei and let out waves of hysterical roars. It was as though he wanted to tear Wang Wei into pieces and burn his bones to ashes. You won't let me get away with this? Wang Wei smiled coldly when he heard the brocade-clad young man's words. He raised his hand again and slammed it down like a fan, pressing the brocade-clad young man down in front of him like a dead dog. Bang! Wang Wei raised his foot and stepped on the head of the young man in embroidered robes as he looked down at the young man. I'm curious. How can you not let me get away with this? This is no longer the mundane realm you came from. This is the Devata realm. It doesn't matter if you're a dragon or a tiger in the mundane realm. You're nothing but an ant in the Devata realm. Anyone can step on you. If it weren't for the rule that forbids us from killing those who have just ascended, you'd be dead by now. Wang Wei's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he spoke. I'm a direct disciple of the palace master of the Great Wool Palace. The Great Wool Palace, which I belong to, is a famous and powerful force even in the blazing fire heaven. Since you destroyed my arm, I'll make sure you die a graveless death when I return to the Great Wool Palace. The young man in embroidered robes who was being stepped on by Wang Wei shouted angrily. The Great Wool Palace was the force that the young man in embroidered robes belonged to when he was in the mundane realm. The Great Wool Palace's influence was not limited to the mundane realms. Even in the Devata realm, the blazing fire heaven, the Great Wool Palace was a powerful force. Great Wool Palace? Wang Wei was stunned when he heard the young man's words. Then he sneered indifferently and said, I'm sorry, I've never heard of the Great Wool Palace you mentioned. As for the blazing fire heaven, it must be the blazing fire heaven in the Devata realm, right? Unfortunately, you're not in the blazing fire heaven. We're in the spirit overarching heaven. The sneer on Wang Wei's face deepened as he continued to say, If I'm not mistaken, the Great Wool Palace you mentioned must be a force in the blazing fire heaven. Unfortunately, you're not in the blazing fire heaven, but the spirit overarching heaven. For someone who has just ascended to a Devata realm, going to the blazing fire heaven from the spirit overarching heaven is more difficult than ascending to heaven. So what if the force you're in is a powerful force in the blazing fire heaven? You won't be able to borrow its power in the spirit overarching heaven. As he finished speaking, Wang Wei squatted down and gave the absent-minded young man in embroidered clothes 2 slaps on the face. The sound of the slaps was exceptionally clear. Boy, you better behave yourself in the spirit overarching heaven. If you dare to provoke me again, even if I can't kill you, I don't mind crippling one of your legs. Wang Wei looked at the young man disdainfully before he retracted his leg. However, the brocade-robed young man did not immediately regain his senses and stood up. He continued to lie there with a blank look in his eyes. It was as if he did not feel anything even after being slapped twice. He kept muttering to himself, "Young master, you're too young." He muttered to himself, "How's this possible? How's this possible? The mundane realm I'm in is the blazing fire heaven. How can this not be the blazing fire heaven?" The young man seemed to be in disbelief when he heard the young man's muttering. The Devata realm he was in was not the blazing fire heaven. At this moment, the young man seemed more like a lunatic than a heavenly celestial, who had just become a heavenly celestial. This is the spirit overarching heaven? How's this possible? How can this not be the jade praying heaven? The eminent celestials and 9 tribulation bodiless celestials from the mundane realms I'm from would usually ascend to the dream return heaven. Why would I ascend to the spirit overarching heaven? Can someone tell me what's going on? Duan Lingtian could hear a deafening commotion in the air. Those who had successfully become heavenly celestials in the celestial ascension pool had lost their composure when they heard Wang Wei say this was the spirit overarching heaven. They could not accept this cruel reality. This is the spirit overarching heaven? I ascended from Yin Huang realm. Shouldn't I ascend to the Jade Emperor heaven? At this moment, the group of ascenders in the surroundings was not the only one who was dumbfounded. Even Duanling Tian was dumbfounded. Whether it was Hua Lao, the pagoda spirit of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda, or Xian Yuanji, the 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the Yellow Arch mansion, both of them had told him before. Eminent celestials and 9 tribulation bodiless celestials who ascended from Yin Huang realm would usually ascend to one of the 81 Devata realms, the Jade Emperor heaven, since it was the closest to Yin Huang realm. However, after listening to Wang Wei's words, Duan Lingtian learned that he was not in the Jade Emperor heaven. Currently, he was not in the Jade Emperor heaven, but a Devata realm called the Spirit Overarching Heaven. How's this possible? Duan Lingtian's eyes followed the gazes of the other ascenders and landed on Wang Wei, who was standing at the edge of the pool. Their eyes were filled with confusion. They did not know why they did not ascend to the Devata realm they had expected. Instead, they were sent to the Spirit Overarching Heaven, a Devata realm that was completely foreign to them. A year ago, there was an upheaval in the colossal world that occurs only once in 10,000 years. Wang Wei glanced at Duan Lingtian and the others coldly, as though he did not care to answer their questions. At this moment, the silver-armored young man, Feng Qing, began to explain. During the upheaval in the colossal world, there's only a small chance of ascending to the Devata realm that's adjacent to the mundane realm. The upheaval in the Great Thousand World only occurs once every 10,000 years. However, once it occurs, it will last for 1,000 years. Chapter 2575. After listening to Feng Qing's explanation, the group of ascenders, including Duan Lingtian, finally understood what was going on. So that's how it is. At this moment, Duan Lingtian finally understood what was going on. As it turned out, all of this was related to the turmoil in the colossal world. Duan Lingtian had heard about the colossal world from Hua Lao, the pagoda spirit of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda. The colossal world was the name of the 81 Devata realms, the countless mundane realms, and some other realms. In short, it was the colossal world. The colossal world encompassed all the realms in the world. I see. The turmoil in the colossal world. I didn't know that our luck would be so good, that we would run into the turbulence of a sector that only has a 1 in 10 chance of happening. The most ridiculous thing is the turmoil in the colossal world only began a year ago. If I had ascended a year ago, I definitely wouldn't have ascended to this spirit overarching heaven that is completely unfamiliar to me. Initially, I thought I'd be able to join my sect after ascending to a Devata realm. I didn't expect I wouldn't ascend to the Devata realm my sect is in. After listening to Feng Qing's explanation, the group of ascenders in the celestial ascension pool finally understood the reason they had ascended to the spirit overarching heaven. As it turned out, it was due to the turmoil in the colossal world that occurred once every 10,000 years. We can't go against the will of the heavens. That's right. Isn't it our fate that we're here as well? Although it's an accident that we ascended to the spirit overarching heaven, let's take it one step at a time. Who knows when we'll be able to leave the spirit overarching heaven and head to the Devata realm we want to go to? That's easy for you to say. Didn't you hear Wang Wei say it's harder for us to leave the spirit overarching heaven to head to the Devata realm? Although there were some optimistic people among the group of ascenders in the celestial ascension pool, most of them were pessimistic. The former was calm while the latter was disappointed. Silence. All of a sudden, an explosive shout rang out, suppressing the clamor of the group of ascenders. It was the robust young man in silver armor, Wang Wei, and his cold and indifferent gaze swept past Duan Lingtian and the others. My name is Wang Wei. I'm the guide for all of you who have just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven and have become heavenly celestials. Now, all of you, leave the celestial ascension pool immediately and follow me to report to the camp. Guide? Camp. Report for duty. Upon hearing Wang Wei's words, the group of ascenders, including Duan Lingtian, couldn't help but be stunned. Although they had ascended to the Devata realms, they did not know that the Devata realms were filled with people. After they ascended to the Devata realms, who would guide them to the camps? In the mundane realms, they were all blessed by the heavens and were used to being carefree. And now, listening to Wang Wei's words, it seemed that he wanted to bring them to report to some camp? An ominous premonition rose in their hearts. Lord Wang Wei, what do you mean by reporting to the camp? Soon after, a middle-aged man who had just ascended asked Wang Wei anxiously. Cut the crap. However, Wang Wei merely glanced at the middle-aged ascender coldly when he asked the question. Then he looked at the group of ascendants who had become heavenly celestials, including Duan Lingtian, and said sternly, I'll give you 3 breaths. If you're still in the celestial ascension pool after 3 breaths, this fellow will be your role model. Wang Wei said sternly as he pointed at the young man who had just stood up. His face was pale, but he no longer dared to shout in front of Wang Wei. Although the young man still hated Wang Wei, he was not afraid of Wang Wei. However, after witnessing Wang Wei's strength and learning that he was in an unfamiliar Devata realm, he no longer dared to challenge Wang Wei like he did before. He silently buried his hatred for Wang Wei in the depths of his heart. He planned to seek revenge from Wang Wei in the future, when he was stronger than Wang Wei. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Upon hearing Wang Wei's words, the group of ascenders around Duan Lingtian turned to look at the young man. In the next moment, swoosh, 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 swoosh. In just a breath's time, the group of ascenders who had become heavenly celestials around Duan Lingtian had left the celestial ascension pool. They stood obediently and quietly beside Wang Wei, like a group of docile cats. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was the only one left in the celestial ascension pool. To be more precise, Duan Lingtian was the only one left who had become a heavenly celestial. As for the people around Duan Lingtian, they had just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven and were not heavenly celestials yet. The reason Duan Lingtian did not leave the celestial ascension pool was because he remembered his uncle Xia had told him about the great Xia king. He remembered Xia Jia, Ker's third uncle from the divine offering land, had told him not to leave the celestial ascension pool, so he could temper his 99 heavenly veins in the celestial ascension pool. Duan Lingtian believed Xia Jia would not speak without thinking. For this reason, he did not plan to leave the celestial ascension pool, since he would not be able to enter it again. Someone's not coming out? Soon after, a few of the ascenders standing next to Wang Wei turned to look at Duan Lingtian and exclaimed in unison, Brother Lingtian. They did not expect Duan Lingtian to be so arrogant. They did not expect someone would dare to defy Wang Wei and refuse to leave the celestial ascension pool. Could it be that he wasn't afraid that Wang Wei would cripple him and then humiliate him by trampling him on the ground? After all, they had already learned their lesson. Maybe he's distracted. One of the ascenders who had looked at Duan Lingtian speculated. Upon hearing this, The other ascenders and Wang Wei turned to look at Duan Lingtian in the celestial ascension pool in unison. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was standing in the celestial ascension pool among the ascenders, who had yet to become heavenly celestials. He stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens. Brat, you have one more breath left. Wang Wei did not expect Duan Lingtian would still be in the celestial ascension pool at this moment. His expression darkened immediately. If you still don't come out after one more breath, I'll cripple one of your arms and legs. Then, I'll step on you and ruin your pretty face with the sole of my shoe. A hint of jealousy flashed in Wang Wei's eyes as he looked at Duan Lingtian's handsome face that could mesmerize thousands of girls. After all, compared to Duan Lingtian, Wang Wei's appearance was extremely ordinary. As a celestial from the Devata realms, it was possible to disguise one's face to look better. However, not many people would do that. After all, it would be easy for others to see through their disguises and make fun of them. For this reason, most people chose to maintain their original appearances. Duan Lingtian had planned to negotiate with Wang Wei when he saw Wang Wei looking at him. He wanted to say he had something to attend to, and could not leave the celestial ascension pool for the time being. However, when he heard Wang Wei's words, his face instantly darkened. If it weren't for the fact that I've left the celestial ascension pool and can't return, I would have left the celestial ascension pool immediately. I want to see how you're going to cripple one of my arms and legs, trample on me, and ruin my face. Duan Lingtian said in a deep voice as he looked at Wang Wei coldly. When Duan Lingtian said this, Wang Wei couldn't help but be stunned. Even the other silver-armored young man, Feng Qing, was stunned. He stared at Duan Lingtian, who was in the celestial ascension pool. Feng Qing could not figure it out. How could this newly ascended heavenly celestial be so arrogant after witnessing Wang Wei's strength? Was he not afraid of death? The celestial ascension pool was specially used by eminent celestials to ascend to the spirit overarching heaven. As for the celestial ascension pool used by 9 tribulation bodiless celestials to reconstruct their bodies and become golden celestials, it was somewhere else. Therefore, he was certain that the purple-clad young man in the celestial ascension pool was someone who had just ascended to become a heavenly celestial, not a golden celestial. Wang Wei and Feng Qing were not the only ones who were stunned by Duan Lingtian's words. Even the group of ascended cultivators standing next to Wang Wei were shocked by Duan Lingtian's words. It took them a while before they regained their senses. Is he crazy? Some of the ascended cultivators who regained their senses looked at Duan Lingtian as though they had just seen a ghost. It's one thing if he didn't know Lord Wang Wei's strength earlier, but now that he's seen Lord Wang Wei's strength, he dares to provoke Lord Wang Wei? Is he seeking death? He's still so impulsive even after learning from Duan Lingtian's mistake. He's seeking death. Does he think he's still in the mundane realm? The group of ascended cultivators could not help but shake their heads as they looked at Duan Lingtian. They felt Duan Lingtian was digging his own grave. Kid, it's been 3 breaths time. At this moment, Wang Wei finally regained his senses. He glared at Duan Lingtian coldly as flames of fury burned in his eyes. Now, I'll wait for you to come out. I don't believe you'll be able to stay in there forever. After he finished speaking, he looked at Feng Qing and said, Feng Qing, let's switch shifts for now. You'll lead this batch of ascended cultivators to the camp first. I'll lead the next batch of ascended cultivators you're supposed to lead. You don't have to wait any longer. You can go back and cultivate immediately. Both Wang Wei and Feng Qing were in charge of leading the celestial ascension pool. Wang Wei was in charge of leading Duan Lingtian and the other ascended cultivators. Meanwhile, Feng Qing was in charge of leading the next batch of ascended cultivators. Chapter 2576. Haha, thank you. Feng Qing's eyes lit up when he heard Wang Wei's words. After all, he and Wang Wei had just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven a few thousand years ago. Since they had no background or backing, they were still at the bottom of the spirit overarching heaven. Although he was better now, he could only show off his superiority in front of those who had just ascended, and those who had just ascended not long ago. In the spirit overarching heaven, if one did not have a strong background or backing, one could only rely on oneself to change one's fate. Whether it was in the spirit overarching heaven or other Devata realms, one's strength spoke louder than words. The weak were like ants in front of the strong. Under such circumstances, they would try their best to make use of the time available to cultivate in order to improve their cultivation as soon as possible, because only by further improving their strength would their status in the spirit overarching heaven be correspondingly improved, and they would be able to look down on more people. They would not only be able to look down on those who had just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven, but also on those who had just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven. As for you, thank you. If it weren't for you, Wang Wei wouldn't have taken the initiative to ask me to switch shifts. After thanking Wang Wei, Feng Qing glanced at Duanling Tian with a faint smile on his face. Then, he led the group of people who had just left the celestial ascension pool and surrounded Wang Wei away. After Feng Qing and the others left, apart from those who had yet to become heavenly celestials, Duanling Tian and Wang Wei were the only ones left in the celestial ascension pool that was as big as a football field. Since you want to wait, you can wait as long as you want, Duanling Tian said indifferently, as he looked at Wang Wei, who was glaring at him with anger in his eyes. As soon as Duanling Tian finished speaking, he ignored the anger in Wang Wei's eyes and closed his eyes to feel the gentle energy in the celestial ascension pool. It was a power that was similar to celestial elemental energy, but it was also very different from celestial elemental energy. When it touched his body, it gave him a very warm feeling. It was like soaking in a hot spring. Since third uncle reminded me not to be in a hurry to leave the celestial ascension pool after I ascend to the Devata realms, I'm sure it'll be beneficial to me. He had only met Xiajia once, so they couldn't be considered acquaintances. However, based on the fact that Xiajia was the third uncle of his wife, Kuer, and the fact that Xiajia had saved his life before, he did not doubt Xiajia's words at all. But how should I temper the heavenly vein? Could it be that I have to absorb the energy from the celestial ascension pool and merge it with my body? Then, it will circulate through my 99 heavenly veins while tempering them? Duanling Tian immediately relaxed his body and mind, absorbing the gentle energy from the celestial ascension pool into his body and circulating it through his 99 heavenly veins. Although Duanling Tian deliberately slowed down, he did not notice the energy from the celestial ascension pool had a tempering effect on his 99 heavenly veins. He continued for half an hour, but there was still no effect. What's going on? Why is there no effect at all? Is third uncle trying to trick me? An hour later, Duanling Tian opened his eyes in bewilderment. At this moment, the group of people around Duanling Tian had not become heavenly celestials, so they had regained their consciousness as well. Only Duanling Tian and Wang Wei, the silver-armored young man standing next to the celestial ascension pool, were conscious. As soon as Duanling Tian opened his eyes, he saw Wang Wei glaring at him coldly. It was as though he wanted to tear him into pieces. However, Duanling Tian merely glanced at Wang Wei indifferently and ignored him. Instead, he focused on the 99 saint veins in his body. There's no reason for third uncle to lie to me. Duanling Tian smiled wryly. Right. All of a sudden, Duanling Tian seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes lit up. I think I can try using the divine ability, the elementary devouring spell, to devour the energy in the celestial ascension pool. After casting the elementary devouring tactic, the speed at which I absorb the energy in the celestial ascension pool will reach a terrifying level. Perhaps, the energy in the celestial ascension pool will have a tempering effect on the 99 saint veins in my body. With that thought in mind, Duanling Tian closed his eyes again and cast the assist-type divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic. A black vortex appeared and merged with his body. However, due to the white mist surrounding the immortal ascension pool, Wang Wei, who was standing beside the immortal ascension pool, did not notice anything amiss. However, Wang Wei soon couldn't help but frown, because he clearly saw the white mist in the immortal ascension pool, where the purple-robed ascender that he hated to the bone was standing shook. Then, it actually twisted and spun, almost completely concealing the purple-robed ascender's figure. What's he doing? Wang Wei's expression darkened. However, he could not figure out what Duan Lingtian was doing. He felt even more frustrated. Haha, it's really effective. At this moment, Duan Lingtian, who had cast the elementary devouring tactic, quickly discovered that the energy in the celestial ascension pool was being sucked into the immortal ascension pool. The energy in the celestial ascension pool that he had absorbed through the elementary devouring tactic was running amok in his 99 heavenly veins. It was completely out of his control, causing the 99 heavenly veins in his body to be greatly pressured. Under such pressure, the 99 heavenly veins continued to be damaged and healed. In this manner, it continued to circulate. During this process, Duan Lingtian also experienced a heart-wrenching pain. Every time one of his heavenly veins was torn, it was as though a knife was scraping his internal organs. He could only endure the pain silently. However, as the heavenly veins continued to be damaged and healed, they became even more tenacious. As it turned out, Duan Lingtian's actions were effective. The 99 heavenly veins in his body continued to transform under his relentless tempering. With the passage of time, a great transformation similar to that of a phoenix's nirvana had taken place. Duan Lingtian was so engrossed in tempering his 99 heavenly veins that he did not notice. Around him, as time passed, batch after batch of ascenders appeared. Naturally, these ascenders had just ascended and had not become heavenly celestials. Therefore, they were in a comatose state as well. That was not all. Even the group of people who had ascended after Duan Lingtian, who should have become heavenly celestials in the spirit overarching heaven, did not show any signs of waking up. At some point, Wang Wei was no longer the only person dressed in silver armor at the edge of the celestial ascension pool. There were 3 people dressed in silver armor standing next to Wang Wei. One of them was a middle-aged man, and the other 2 were young men. At this moment, the 3 of them were looking at the people in the celestial ascension pool in confusion. What's going on? Usually at this time, there should be 3 batches of ascenders who had successfully become heavenly celestials and woke up. However, none of them showed any signs of becoming heavenly celestials or waking up at this time. Wang Wei, just who is this ascender that's still in the midst of the swirling white fog? Who is he? I have a feeling that the reason why the 3 groups of ascenders, who should have become heavenly immortals and awakened, didn't wake up has something to do with him. The gazes of the middle-aged man in silver armor and the other 2 young men in silver armor fell on Wang Wei, who was beside them. Waves of confusion rose in their eyes simultaneously. They had been here for a while, so they knew why Wang Wei was still in the celestial ascension pool. You're thinking too much. How could someone who has just ascended be able to affect other ascenders' chances of becoming heavenly celestials? Wang Wei looked at the faintly discernible purple figure that was surrounded by the constantly rotating white fog with a look of contempt on his face. That's true. However, who can explain what's going on? I have a feeling this isn't a coincidence. It's a pity we can't use our divine consciousness to check the celestial ascension pool. Otherwise, we can use our divine consciousness to check if this is the doing of this purple-clad ascender. The middle-aged man and the 2 young men in silver armor frowned when they heard Wang Wei's words. Duan Lingtian was unaware of what was going on outside. He was unaware that he had used his divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, to devour the energy in the celestial ascension pool and affect the ascender's chances of becoming heavenly celestials. Although the energy in the celestial ascension pool was constantly being nurtured, every time it was nurtured, it would be completely absorbed by him. Under such circumstances, the group of ascenders around him would not even be able to obtain a single strand of hair. Until Duan Lingtian discovered the 99 heavenly veins in his body were no longer damaged. He opened his eyes, and a bright smile appeared on his face. My 99 heavenly veins are no longer the same as when I first ascended to the spirit overarching heaven. At this moment, Duan Lingtian could clearly feel the changes in his heavenly veins. Not only had the heavenly vein in his body become tougher, but it had also widened significantly. If the original saint veins in his body were as thick as a small snake's body, then each saint vein in his body was as thick as a python's body. They couldn't be compared at all. Duan Lingtian was pleasantly surprised by the transformation of his 99 heavenly veins. He stopped using the elementary devouring technique, and the white fog that enveloped him gradually dissipated, revealing his figure. Chapter 2577. There are so many people. Before Duan Lingtian could figure out who was staring at him, he was shocked to find out that there were so many people in the Ascension Pool. Currently, he was surrounded by a group of people in the Celestial Ascension Pool. The entire Celestial Ascension Pool was filled with people. Why are there so many Ascenders gathered here? Duan Lingtian was dumbfounded as he looked at the group of people who had yet to become heavenly celestials and had yet to regain their senses. Right now, he still hadn't realized. The reason these Ascenders had yet to become heavenly celestials was due to the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, that he had cast earlier. It was similar to plundering the energy they needed to become heavenly celestials. Wang Wei. After a while, Duan Lingtian regained his senses. The few sharp gazes that landed on him came from the edge of the Celestial Ascension Pool. One of the gazes came from Wang Wei. At this moment, there were 7 people standing next to Wang Wei. There were 3 young men, 2 middle-aged men and 2 old men. These 7 people were wearing armor similar to the silver armor on Wang Wei's body. It was obvious they were on the same side as Wang Wei. Brat, are you the one who caused these Ascenders to fail to become heavenly celestials? A questioning voice rang in Duan Lingtian's ears when he looked at Wang Wei. Duan Lingtian shifted his gaze away from Wang Wei and looked at an old man in silver armor, standing near Wang Wei. The old man was the one who had questioned Duan Lingtian earlier. They failed to become heavenly celestials? When Duan Lingtian heard the old man's words and saw the other 6 men in silver armor standing next to Wang Wei, he vaguely realized something. Logically speaking, a person in silver armor would appear here every once in a while, and he would lead a group of Ascenders away. Just like when I first woke up, Wang Wei was the only one here. When all the Ascenders in the same batch as me woke up, Feng Qing came to take over Wang Wei's position. He was waiting for Wang Wei to bring us away, before bringing the next batch of Ascenders away. But now, apart from Wang Wei, there are 7 more people wearing silver armor. Also, the number of people in the Celestial Ascension Pool right now, based on the number of people who ascended with me, it's at least 8 times more than the number of people who ascended with me back then. Could it be that these people are stuck in the Celestial Ascension Pool because I used the elementary devouring tactic to devour the energy in the Celestial Ascension Pool? At this moment, Duan Lingtian finally realized what was going on. If that was the case, it was no wonder that the silver-armored old man would question him and ask him if he was the one who had caused this group of Ascenders to fail to become heavenly immortals. I just followed third uncle's advice to temper the saint veins in my body. I didn't expect so many people would end up in the Celestial Ascension Pool. After faintly realizing what was going on, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. Bang! At the same time, he exerted force in his legs and kicked the bottom of the immortal pond. Then, he leaped into the air like a giant pung bird. He landed outside the immortal pond and left it. I'm sorry. After leaving the Celestial Ascension Pool, Duan Lingtian turned around and looked at the group of Ascenders who were still standing in the Celestial Ascension Pool with an apologetic smile on his face. After leaving the Celestial Ascension Pool, Duan Lingtian turned around to look at the group of Ascenders who were still in the Celestial Ascension Pool. Brat, how dare you ignore me? The old man who had questioned Duan Lingtian was furious when he saw Duan Lingtian ignoring him. His eyes were burning with anger. You're finally out. At the same time, an excited voice rang in the air. When Wang Wei discovered Duan Lingtian had left the Celestial Ascension Pool, an excited expression appeared on his face. At the same time, he made a move and charged toward Duan Lingtian at lightning speed. Killing intent could be seen in his eyes. Whoosh! Wang Wei's figure shot out like a cannonball as he charged towards Duan Lingtian. Brat! I've already said that once you come out, I'll cripple one of your arms and one of your legs before I stomp on your face. Wang Wei's voice, which was filled with ruthlessness, was timely emitted when his body moved. At this moment, the old man who was looking at Duan Lingtian with fire in his eyes earlier, looked at Duan Lingtian with a gloating expression on his face. As for the other 6 people, they looked at Duan Lingtian with pity in their eyes. In their opinion, Duan Lingtian, who had just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven, was destined to suffer for offending Wang Wei. Duan Lingtian regained his senses as soon as Wang Wei made his move. As soon as Duan Lingtian turned to look at Wang Wei had already made his move. His speed was not inferior to a 7 tribulation bodiless celestial in the mundane realm. Naturally, Duan Lingtian could tell Duan Lingtian was not afraid of Duan Lingtian. Wang Wei did not cast any celestial methods or divine abilities. In other words, without casting any celestial methods or divine abilities, Wang Wei's strength was comparable to a 7 tribulation bodiless celestial in the mundane realm. Cripple one of my arms and one of my legs? Stomp on my face? As soon as Wang Wei's words left his mouth, Duan Lingtian's eyes turned cold. His face turned cold, and his body emitted a chilling aura that caused the temperature in the surroundings to drop by a few degrees. We'll have to see if you're capable of doing that. Duan Lingtian smirked as Wang Wei approached him. Then, he cast the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, without any hesitation. A black whirlpool appeared in the air and merged with Duan Lingtian's body. At the same time, a powerful devouring force surged out of the whirlpool. In just a blink of an eye, it devoured a large amount of heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings of the celestial ascension pool. However, it did not devour all the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings. The reason it did not devour all the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings was because Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was not high, and the heaven and earth spirit energy in the Devata realms was much denser than in the mundane realms. Although it did not devour all the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings, Duan Lingtian's celestial origin energy still rose at an extremely fast speed. Although it was only a temporary increase, it gave Duan Lingtian a strength that could split heaven and earth. Naturally, this was only Duan Lingtian's opinion. Compared to Wang Wei's current celestial origin energy, Duan Lingtian's celestial origin energy was nothing. However, Duan Lingtian did not plan to rely on the elementary devouring tactic to fight Wang Wei. So come. With just a thought, Duan Lingtian's celestial origin energy surged out of his body through the 99 heavenly veins and transformed into sword rays that hovered around him. It was as though they were guarding him loyally. That was earlier, when his celestial origin energy surged through the 99 heavenly veins. It seemed to have grown a lot stronger. For a moment, Duan Lingtian could not help but feel slightly dazed. He could not help but feel dazed. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that after he had tempered his 99 heaven veins, not only would the speed of the energy in his body increase, but he would also be able to strengthen the energy in his body as he moved along them. This is equivalent to the effect of 2 elementary devouring tactics stacked together. Duan Lingtian was extremely excited when he felt the celestial origin energy that had been strengthened for the second time surging out of his body. He did not expect this at all. Although he had heard from the pagoda spirit of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda, Hualao, the 3-legged golden crow, that the 99 heavenly veins in the Devata realms were much more powerful than in the mundane realms. Duan Lingtian had heard about it before. Although he had tempered the 99 heavenly veins in the celestial ascension pool under the advice of Ker's third uncle, Xia Jie, he did not expect the 99 heavenly veins to be so powerful. However, he did not expect the 99 heavenly veins to be so powerful. He did not expect the 99 heavenly veins to be able to strengthen his celestial origin energy. This was equivalent to the effect of the elementary devouring tactic stacked on top of his celestial origin energy. Wang Wei, who was charging toward Duan Ling Tian, saw the thousands of sword rays that were condensed on the surface of Duan Ling Tian's body when he was not far away from him. At the same time, he could clearly sense the sharp aura of Duan Ling Tian's sword rays. It made him feel extremely pressured. How's this possible? He's just a cultivator who has just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven. How can he give me such a feeling? In a flash of lightning, these thoughts appeared in Wang Wei's mind one after another. His eyes also revealed waves of fear and disbelief. Dong, 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 dong. In the next moment, a sound similar to the beating of a drum rang from Wang Wei's body. Wang Wei's sturdy body began to grow at an alarming speed. In just a blink of an eye, he had grown from a normal person who was 1.9 meters tall to a giant who was more than 10 meters tall. What was strange was that the silver armor on his body not only did not collapse due to his enlarged body, but it also enlarged along with his body, giving people a feeling that it fit him perfectly. Wang Wei. He cast his assist-type divine ability, just as the other 7 people in silver armor were shocked by Wang Wei's sudden increase in size. Wang Wei's expression changed. Boom, 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 boom. As soon as Wang Wei opened his arms, 2 waves of celestial origin energy shot out of his palms. In just a blink of an eye, the celestial origin energy turned into pillars that intersected and formed a cage around Duan Ling Tian. Gravity? As soon as Duan Ling Tian was enveloped by the cage, he could clearly feel the gravity of the cage was increasing. The gravity in the area that was enveloped by the prison cage increased tremendously. If it was a newcomer who had just ascended to a Devata realm, they would not be able to withstand the gravitational pull. Chapter 2578. Gravitational Prison. Not only did Wang Wei use his assist-type divine ability, Giant Avatar, but he also used his offensive divine ability, Gravity Prison, when facing this newly ascended spirit overarching heaven. Is it really necessary for him to fight a newcomer who has just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven? The other 7 silver-armored men were shocked when they saw Wang Wei cast not only an assist-type divine ability, but an offensive divine ability as well when he attacked Duan Ling Tian. They could not figure it out at all. Why would Wang Wei act as though he was facing a formidable enemy when he was facing a newcomer who had just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven? They were behaving in such a manner because they were still unaware of the fact that Duan Ling Tian's attack was so powerful. The 10,000 sword rays hovering around Duan Ling Tian were not something a newcomer who had just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven could produce. Wang Wei was behaving as though he was facing a formidable enemy because he had discovered the sword rays hovering around Duan Ling Tian was not as simple as it seemed. Boom, 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 boom. A series of deafening explosions suddenly resounded, deafening everyone's ears. It was Wang Wei's divine ability, the gravitational prison, that increased the gravitational force on Duan Ling Tian, as though it was going to crush Duan Ling Tian. Swoosh! While Wang Wei cast his divine ability, the gravitational prison, on Duan Ling Tian, Wang Wei, who had turned into a giant with his assist-type divine ability, the giant celestial body, did not remain idle. He raised his hand and released his celestial origin energy in the form of a sharp saber ray. From afar, the saber ray looked like a gigantic saber. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The sound of a saber buzzing rang in the air. With a lift of his hand, Wang Wei executed a mysterious saber technique. Countless saber rays shot out from the gigantic saber in his hand. It was as though they had transformed into thousands of soldiers and horses. When they charged out, the sound of thunder could be heard as they charged toward Duan Ling Tian, who was imprisoned in the gravitational prison. Countless saber rays tore through the air and charged toward Duan Ling Tian from various tricky angles. It looked as though they were going to tear Duan Ling Tian into pieces. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that the saber rays were aimed at Duan Ling Tian. Although there were many saber rays, they were all aimed at Duan Ling Tian's right arm and right leg. It was obvious they wanted to sever Duan Ling Tian's arm and leg, Wang Wei is using a celestial method. He's really going all out. Is this person who has just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven really worth him making such a big fuss? He's too cautious. The other 7 people in silver armor could not help but shake their heads again when they saw that Wang Wei had not only cast 2 divine abilities, but also a celestial method. They felt Wang Wei was making a mountain out of a molehill. Wang Wei, a blue moon heavenly celestial, had to use his full strength against a newcomer who had just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven. They felt Wang Wei's strength was beneath them. Wang Wei's strength is much stronger than a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the mundane realms. Duan Ling Tian narrowed his eyes when he saw Wang Wei unleashing his full strength. The 7 silver-armored men thought Wang Wei was making a mountain out of a molehill. If Wang Wei did not cast his saber technique, his strength would only be comparable to a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial from the mundane realms. However, now that Wang Wei had cast his saber technique, his strength had surpassed a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial. In fact, he was comparable to a golden celestial from the Devata realms, who did not cast any celestial methods or divine abilities. When Wang Wei's saber technique unleashed countless saber rays that charged into the gravitational prison and was about to cut off Duan Ling Tian's arm and leg, Duan Ling Tian's eyes turned cold immediately. Sword formation. 13 green lotus swords. With just a thought, Duan Ling Tian cast the most powerful technique from the sovereign heart sword and the offensive divine ability, the 13 green lotus swords. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. In just a blink of an eye, the tens of thousands of sword rays hovering around Duan Ling Tian shone brightly before they formed a sword formation at an exaggerated speed. Moreover, they left behind 7 afterimages as they charged out in a menacing manner. Duan Ling Tian had only cast the first 7 swords of the 13 green lotus swords. This was because he did not think he would need to use the last few swords to deal with Wang Wei. Boom! Soon after, the sword formation and the 7 afterimages merged together, emitting a dazzling light. Swoosh! 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 When the sword whistled once again, the tens of thousands of sword glows that had gathered into the sword formation surged once again, causing the might of the sword formation to rise by an entire level in an instant. Boom! 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 While Wang Wei and the other 7 silver-armored men were stunned by Duan Ling Tian's sudden attack, Duan Ling Tian's sword formation had already easily destroyed the gravitational prison that enveloped Wang Wei and the other 7 silver-armored men. The gravity prison was still bearing its fangs at Duan Ling Tian earlier. However, it could not withstand a single blow from Duan Ling Tian's sword formation. It was easily defeated by Duan Ling Tian's sword formation. During this time, Duan Ling Tian's sword formation met with Wang Wei's celestial method saber technique. Although there was some resistance, Duan Ling Tian managed to gain the upper hand in just a blink of an eye and successfully defeated Wang Wei's sword formation. Impossible! Horror dawned on Wang Wei's face when he saw the sword formation cast by Duan Ling Tian was like a wild beast that had gone berserk and defeated all of his attacks. His eyes were wide open. Other than disbelief, there was only disbelief in his eyes. He had a feeling Duan Ling Tian was not as simple as he thought. Otherwise, he would not have used all his strength so cautiously. However, he did not expect Duan Ling Tian to be so powerful. Even if he used all his strength, he was still no match for this person, who had just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven. No! A hint of despair appeared on Wang Wei's face when he saw Duan Ling Tian's sword formation charging toward him like a ghost. He did not even have the time to circulate his celestial origin energy to defend himself before a hint of despair appeared on his face. Spurt! Splash! Ah! The sound of something being severed rang in the air. It was accompanied by a heart-wrenching cry. The 7 silver-armored men who had just regained their senses shuddered in fear. In the next moment, they were shocked to see Duan Ling Tian's sword formation. One of Wang Wei's arms and one of his legs had been severed and minced. Blood rained down from the sky and dyed the ground red. The blood rained down like the petals of a red rose. It was beautiful and eye-catching. However, at this moment, apart from Duan Lingtian, no one else was looking at this scene with admiration. You should feel lucky that you didn't kill me earlier. Otherwise you'd be a corpse by now. Duan Lingtian's cold voice suddenly resonated, causing Wang Wei and the others' hearts to tremble. Wang Wei stopped the bleeding from his severed arms and legs. When he looked at Duan Lingtian again, a hint of relief could be seen on his pale face. Fortunately, he still remembered the rule of not killing people who had just ascended. Otherwise, he would have killed this purple-clad ascendant in a fit of rage. If he had killed this purple-clad ascendant, he would not be alive now. You. Who are you? When Wang Wei looked at Duan Lingtian again, his face was filled with fear, as though he had just seen a ghost. This was his first time seeing someone who had just become a heavenly celestial, with such terrifying strength. Is he really just a heavenly celestial? Although the other 7 men in silver armor knew the celestial ascension pool was used by eminent celestials to ascend to the upper realm, they were still shocked. After witnessing Duan Lingtian's strength, they could not help but extend their divine consciousness to probe Duan Lingtian's cultivation base. It was difficult for Duan Lingtian to not notice the 7 powerful divine consciousnesses. Their divine consciousness, 5 of them are comparable to 7 tribulation bodiless celestials. 2 of them are comparable to 8 tribulation bodiless celestials. Although Duan Lingtian noticed the 7 divine consciousnesses, he was not bothered by their probing at all. Even if they attacked him with a soul attack after confirming he was a low-level heavenly celestial who had just ascended to the Devata realm, he could still use the mysterious defective metal piece to defend himself. These 7 men were clearly on par with Wang Wei. Their cultivation bases should be similar to Wang Wei's. They had not even entered the golden celestial stage yet. Duan Lingtian was confident he could throw out the defective metal piece in time to block the soul attack cast by existences with their cultivation bases. Where's the metal piece? Just as Duan Lingtian was about to reach into his pocket, his expression changed immediately. He suddenly remembered something. The robe he was wearing had been destroyed in the process of ascension. Could it be that, when my robe was destroyed during my ascension, the incomplete piece of metal was also lost in the mundane plane? Duan Lingtian's expression darkened when he thought about this. Before he ascended, apart from the Devata artifact, the 7 orifices exquisite sword, that had lost its soul, he only brought the defective metal piece with him. He did not bring anything else with him. He still remembered he had casually put the defective metal piece into his pocket. The reason he did that was because he could not bring his spatial ring from the mundane realm to the Devata realm. At that time, he did not think about it at all. His robe was from the mundane realm, so he could not bring it to the Devata realm. Naturally, he did not think about it at all. Chapter 2579. Just when Duan Lingtian thought he had lost the mysterious defective metal piece in the mundane realm, his heart sank, and his expression changed drastically. Duan Lingtian's heart sank. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 7 powerful divine consciousnesses had already touched Duan Lingtian's body and made their way to his soul. They wanted to probe Duan Lingtian's soul to determine Duan Lingtian's current cultivation base. Just as the 7 divine consciousness were about to touch Duan Lingtian's soul, Duan Lingtian was shocked to discover that something strange had happened. The 7 divine consciousness disappeared mysteriously, just as they were about to touch his soul. It was as though they were stones sinking into the sea. Naturally, Duan Lingtian could sense that the divine consciousness had not returned. It wasn't that the owners of the 7 divine consciousnesses had taken the initiative to withdraw their divine consciousnesses, but that there was something near his soul that had forcefully devoured the 7 divine consciousnesses. It's that thing. When Duan Lingtian used his inner vision to look at the situation around his soul, he could easily see that there was a strange aura surrounding his soul. At the side of his soul, there was a defective piece of metal that was flickering with profound light floating there. Just now, it had devoured all 7 strands of divine consciousness when they were trying to probe his soul. When did it go there? Duan Lingtian was surprised and overjoyed when he discovered the defective metal piece, hovering next to his soul like a guardian. He was surprised that this piece of metal had appeared on the side of his soul, and he hadn't noticed it at all. He was overjoyed that the defective metal piece had not been lost in the mundane realm due to his carelessness. Duan Lingtian was still feeling surprised and overjoyed. Meanwhile, the 7 silver-armored men who had failed to probe Duan Lingtian's cultivation base because their divine consciousness had been devoured by the defective metal piece hovering next to Duan Lingtian's soul. They looked at each other speechlessly. After a dozen breaths, one of the silver-armored men finally guessed. Could this person be a golden celestial? Based on the fact that Duan Lingtian had defeated Wang Wei, who was a blue moon heavenly celestial, and the fact that his divine consciousness was like a stone sinking into the sea when it touched Duan Lingtian's soul, he had no choice but to speculate. He had thought Duan Lingtian was a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial when he was in the mundane realm. Now that he had ascended to the Devata realm, he had become a golden celestial. At this moment, he seemed to have forgotten that the celestial pool was a golden celestial. The celestial ascension pool in front of him was specially used by eminent celestials from the mundane realms. It could only help eminent celestials become heavenly celestials. On the other hand, the celestial ascension pool used by 9 tribulation bodiless celestials from the mundane realms was different from the celestial ascension pool. Not only could it help 9 tribulation bodiless celestials become golden celestials, but it could also help them rebuild their bodies, so they no longer had to live in the form of a soul. Golden celestial? Impossible. That's right. Don't forget this isn't the celestial ascension pool used by 9 tribulation bodiless celestials in the mundane realms. This is the celestial ascension pool used by eminent celestials in the mundane realms. Only eminent celestials from the mundane realms will be able to become crimson moon heavenly celestials when they wake up. I can't believe a crimson moon heavenly celestial has such terrifying strength. The celestial methods and divine abilities he cast earlier must be extraordinary. For him to be able to suppress Wang Wei, who's a blue moon heavenly celestial, with his cultivation base, as a crimson moon heavenly celestial, it means that the celestial method and divine ability he cast are of a terrifying level. It seems like he's either from a powerful force, or he had a fortuitous encounter in the mundane realms. The other 6 people chimed in one after another. They did not think Duan Lingtian was a golden celestial. As for why they could not detect Duan Lingtian's cultivation base with their divine consciousness, it was possible that Duan Lingtian knew how to conceal his cultivation base. After all, it was not uncommon in the Devata realms. Celestial method, divine ability? Upon hearing the 7 people's words, Wang Wei, who had lost an arm and a leg, looked at Duan Lingtian with a hint of greed in his eyes. However, when he saw Duan Lingtian looking at him, he lowered his head again. However, the greed in his eyes did not diminish. Instead, it grew even more intense. A mere crimson moon heavenly celestial was able to defeat a blue moon heavenly celestial who had cast all his divine abilities with just a celestial method and divine ability. Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was several stages higher than his. Based on this, one could easily imagine how powerful Duan Lingtian's celestial methods and divine abilities were. Crimson moon heavenly celestial? Blue moon heavenly celestial? At this moment, Duan Lingtian finally regained his senses after discovering the defective metal piece was not lost in the mundane realm. He frowned slightly as he looked at the 7 silver-armored men who were whispering among themselves. Is that the cultivation base of a heavenly celestial in the Devata realms? Duan Lingtian knew eminent celestials from the mundane realms would become heavenly celestials after they ascended to the Devata realms. He knew 9 tribulation bodiless celestials from the mundane realms would become golden celestials after they ascended to the Devata realms. He also knew golden celestials were above heavenly celestials. However, he knew nothing about the specific division between the heaven celestial stage and the gold celestial stage. Why, you don't even know the difference between heavenly celestials? Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Not only was Wang Wei, who had his head lowered, stunned, but the other 7 men in silver armor were stunned as well. Moreover, based on Duan Lingtian's reaction, it did not seem like he was asking a question he already knew the answer to. Generally speaking, if he's from a powerful force, he should have known the difference between heavenly celestials when he was in the mundane realm. It's impossible for someone from a powerful force to not know the difference between the 7 stages of heavenly celestials. If that's the case, there's only one possibility. He must have had a fortuitous encounter in the mundane realm and obtained an extremely powerful celestial method and divine ability. Soon, the 7 people who were wearing the same silver armor as Wang Wei began to communicate via voice transmission. In the end, they confirmed one thing. The purple-clad man before them was most likely someone who had a fortuitous encounter in the mundane realm. Moreover, it was highly likely he did not have a powerful background. When they looked at Duan Lingtian again, a hint of greed could be seen in their eyes. Heavenly celestials are divided into 7 stages. People call them the 7 stages of heavenly celestials. Soon after, one of the middle-aged men in silver armor explained patiently to Duan Lingtian, as his eyes gleamed brightly. The 7 stages of the heavenly celestial realm are further divided into the Crimson Moon Heavenly Celestial, Orange Moon Heavenly Celestial, Yellow Moon Heavenly Celestial, Green Moon Heavenly Celestial, Blue Moon Heavenly Celestial, and Violet Moon Heavenly Celestial. They correspond to the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 tribulation bodiless celestial in the mundane realms. The 7 colors of the rainbow. Duan Lingtian raised an eyebrow when he heard the silver-armored man's words. If that was the case, it was not difficult to remember the 7 stages of heavenly celestials. Naturally, although heavenly celestials and bodiless celestials have the same cultivation base, their strength is incomparable. Since bodiless celestials from the mundane realms don't have bodies, they can't withstand the pressure from casting celestial methods and divine abilities from the Devata realms. For this reason, they can't cast celestial methods and divine abilities. For this reason, in the Devata realms, a green moon heavenly celestial, who has mastered an ordinary offensive divine ability, an ordinary assist-type divine ability, and an ordinary celestial method, is comparable to a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial in the mundane realms. On the other hand, a green moon heavenly celestial's cultivation base is comparable to a 6 tribulation bodiless celestial in the mundane realms. The silver-armored man paused for a moment before he looked at Duan Lingtian with a burning gaze. Based on your strength as a crimson moon heavenly celestial, you should be able to defeat a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial in the mundane realms. The strength you displayed when you defeated Wang Wei is comparable to an orange sun golden celestial, without any celestial methods, divine abilities, or celestial weapons. Orange sun golden celestial. Duan Lingtian was stunned. Just like the 7 realms of the heavenly immortal realm, golden immortals are also divided into 7 realms of the golden immortal realm. They are the red sun golden immortal, orange sun golden immortal, yellow sun golden immortal, green sun golden immortal, blue sun golden immortal, indigo sun golden immortal, and violet sun golden immortal. The silver-armored man could see Duan Lingtian's confusion, so he explained. Wang Wei's strength is comparable to a crimson sun golden celestial, without any celestial methods, divine abilities, or celestial weapons. Now that you've become a crimson moon heavenly celestial, your strength is comparable to an orange sun golden celestial. This means your strength is comparable to a crimson sun golden celestial when you were an eminent celestial. Naturally, the golden celestial I'm talking about here is a golden celestial without any celestial methods, divine abilities, or celestial weapons. At the end of his sentence, the silver-armored middle-aged man added another sentence. Realization dawned on Duan Lingtian. Wang Wei is a blue moon heavenly celestial. Based on the divine consciousness they sent out earlier, 5 of them are blue moon heavenly celestials, and 2 indigo moon heavenly celestials. Earlier, when the 7 silver-armored men probed him with their divine consciousness, he discovered 5 of them had divine consciousness, that was comparable to a 7 tribulation bodiless celestial, while 2 of them had divine consciousness that was comparable to an 8 tribulation bodiless celestial. They were blue moon heavenly celestials and indigo moon heavenly celestials. In other words, 5 of them have a cultivation base that's comparable to Wang Wei. The other 2 have a cultivation base that's even stronger than Wang Wei. At the same time, Duan Ling Tian also realized this. Who are all of you? Duan Ling Tian asked curiously as he looked at the silver-armored man. Chapter 2580. Duan Ling Tian did not know who the people in the silver armor, including Wang Wei, were. He also did not know why these people wanted to bring these people, who had just ascended, to the camp. He did not ascend to the Devata realms to report to the camp. The reason he had ascended to the Devata realm was for a better cultivation environment and better cultivation resources, so he could quickly raise his cultivation base, so he could go to the divine offering land to rescue Ku-er, his family, and his friends after 1,000 years. Where the decurions of the Silverworm army, the middle-aged man in silver armor replied to Duan Lingtian's question. Silverworm army? Duan Lingtian frowned. You're an army? Yes. The middle-aged man nodded. The Silverworm army belongs to Bloody Spectre City. The commander of the Silverworm army is one of the 3 strongest powerhouses under the Lord City Governor of Bloody Spectre City. Bloody Spectre City? Duan Lingtian raised an eyebrow. Bloody Spectre City is the only city in this area. It's part of 9 Spectres County. Apart from being a place for celestials to stay, it's also in charge of the celestial ascension pools in this area. The silver-armored middle-aged man continued to say, the celestial ascension pool you just left is only one of the many celestial ascension pools that the Bloody Spectre City is in charge of. Those who ascend to this celestial ascension pool are usually led by 2 100-man squads from the Silverworm army. Led? When Duan Ling Tian heard this, he said indifferently, earlier, I seem to have heard that all of you are going to bring us to a camp to report. Are we going to report to the Silverworm army's camp? That's right. The middle-aged man in silver armor nodded. Why do we have to report to the Silverworm army's camp? Duan Ling Tian narrowed his eyes. Because this is the rule. The ascendants in 9 Spectres County are usually brought to their camps by the armies of the various cities to report to them. Then they'll serve under their supervision. They'll be under the supervision of the army, the middle-aged man in silver armor said. Only those who have served for 1,000 years can regain their freedom. Only after serving for 1,000 years can I regain my freedom? Duan Lingtian's pupils suddenly constricted, and then he couldn't help but sneer. What a tyrannical rule. They actually want the ascenders to serve for 1,000 years before returning their freedom. However, Duan Lingtian looked at the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army, including Wang Wei, and said indifferently, although I've just ascended to the Devata realm, I'm afraid all of you won't be able to stop me if I want to leave. Of the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army, the 2 strongest were Blue Moon Heavenly Immortals, Blue Moon Celestial Immortal. Unless one had mastered an extremely powerful immortal spell or divine ability, it was impossible to keep him here. Almost as soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the expressions of the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army darkened. A loud and clear voice came from afar. If it was before we arrived, they might not be able to keep you here. However, it won't be so easy for you to leave now. Duan Lingtian raised an eyebrow when he heard the voice. He turned to look at the source of the voice. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes and looked over. In the distance, 2 figures could be seen flashing across the sky. In just a blink of an eye, they had arrived in front of Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian and Wang Wei were dressed in silver armor. One of them was a middle-aged man, and the other was a young man dressed in silver armor. Although both of them were also dressed in silver armor, the badges on their chests shone brightly under the sunlight. There were 2 dragon heads on the badges on their chests. Unlike the badges on the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army, there were 2 dragon heads on the badges on their chests. Unknowingly, it exposed their extraordinary identities. Lord Centurion. Lord Centurion. The 8 decurions of the Silverworm army, including Wang Wei, bowed respectfully when they saw the middle-aged man and the young man dressed in silver armor. As expected, earlier, Duan Lingtian had already faintly sensed these two men's identities were not simple. When he saw the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army, including Wang Wei, greeting them respectfully, he knew his guess was correct. Whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, Duan Lingtian noticed 2 divine consciousness from the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army that had just arrived. It was obvious they wanted to probe him as well. When Duan Lingtian sensed the divine consciousness of the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army that was comparable to a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial, he became even more nonchalant. What a joke! He was not even afraid of a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial's soul attack, let alone a divine consciousness that was comparable to a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial. As soon as the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army's divine consciousness entered Duan Lingtian's body and approached his soul, it was devoured by the defective metal piece that was hovering beside Duan Lingtian's soul. Whoosh! Chua! Instantly, the expressions of the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army changed. Good move. The middle-aged centurion of the Silverworm army looked at Duan Lingtian and praised him. A mere crimson moon heavenly celestial, who has just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven from the mundane realm, knows how to conceal his cultivation base. How rare! Another centurion of the Silver Dragon army, who looked like a young man, took a deep look at Duan Lingtian and said, "What? Could it be that the 2 centurions are here to stop me from leaving?" Duan Lingtian said lightly. At this moment, Duan Lingtian finally realized why the decurion of the Silverworm army answered his question so cooperatively. As it turned out, they were the ones who had informed the centurion of the Silverworm army to come over. As for why the other party was so cooperative in answering his questions, it was most likely to stall for time and wait for the 2 centurions to arrive. However, they thought, could these 2 centurions stop him from leaving just because they were here? How naive! After all, the strength he had displayed so far was still far from his full strength. Originally, my biggest weakness was my soul. However, now, Duan Lingtian felt relieved when he thought about the defective metal piece hovering next to his soul. When he was still in the mundane realm, he had thought about this before. After he ascended to the Devata realm, he could rely on the celestial methods and divine abilities granted by the Sovereign Heart Sword to fight opponents with a higher cultivation base than him. However, if he encountered a powerful celestial whose soul attack was so fast that he could not react in time to throw out the defective metal piece, he would most likely be doomed. Now the defective metal piece had strangely entered his body and was hovering beside his soul. This made him feel much more at ease. This meant that he was not afraid at all. As long as the soul attacks were not so strong that the defective metal piece could not deal with them, there was nothing for him to be afraid of. After all, the soul attacks would not be able to harm him. Currently, if the soul attacks wanted to harm him or even destroy his soul, they would have to go through the defective metal piece first. If the defective metal piece can't withstand a soul attack, how powerful would the soul attack be? In the Devata realms, even the soul attack of a great overarching golden celestial could be easily absorbed by the defective metal piece, right? When Duan Lingtian recalled one of the origins of the defective metal piece, the powerhouse from the divine offering land, Kuer's third uncle Xiajia, he calmed down. Perhaps, even the soul attack of a heavenly emperor from the Devata realms won't be able to harm or kill me. Duan Lingtian's eyes brightened when he thought about this. Naturally, Duan Lingtian was only thinking about it. After all, before the heavenly emperor powerhouse used a soul attack on him and was blocked by the incomplete metal piece, he did not dare to be certain. He did not know if the defective metal piece could withstand the soul attack of a heavenly emperor. Earlier, when I attacked Wang Wei, I still held back a lot. For example, I only used 7 of the 13 green lotus swords. If I had used all 13 swords, the strength I displayed earlier would have been 2 levels higher. Moreover, I still have the defective Devata artifact the Seven Orifices exquisite sword, which is comparable to a top celestial weapon. Although I'm not sure how strong a top celestial weapon is, it's definitely not comparable to an ordinary celestial weapon. Even if I don't use the Seven Orifices exquisite sword, my strength is comparable to a green sun golden celestial, who doesn't use his celestial weapon, celestial method, or divine ability. If I use the Seven Orifices exquisite sword, I might be able to defeat a violet sun golden celestial, who doesn't use his celestial weapon, celestial method, or divine ability. Since Duan Lingtian had a damaged top celestial weapon, the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda, he knew very well how powerful it was. A top celestial weapon was much more powerful than an ordinary celestial weapon. Even the most ordinary celestial weapon could raise a celestial's strength by a level, let alone a top celestial weapon. However, if I really have to face a violet sun golden celestial, I won't be able to defeat him. After all, a violet sun golden celestial would definitely use his celestial method, divine ability, or celestial weapon. After all, it's not realistic. Duan Lingtian knew this very well. Even if a green sun golden celestial, who has mastered ordinary celestial methods and divine abilities, possesses an ordinary celestial weapon, I might not be a match for him. The most ordinary celestial method in the Devata realm can raise his strength by a level. If the most ordinary assistive divine ability and offensive divine ability can raise his strength by a level, then the divine ability can raise his strength by 2 levels. Moreover, the celestial weapon can raise his strength by a level. Even if he's not as strong as a great overarching golden celestial, who doesn't use celestial methods, divine abilities, or celestial weapons, he's definitely stronger than a violet sun golden celestial, who doesn't use celestial methods, divine abilities, or celestial weapons. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was still unsure how much help the Seven Orifices exquisite sword could give him. Chapter 2581. What? Are the 2 centurions here to stop me from leaving? In the face of Duan Lingtian's calm and casual question, Duan Lingtian's expression changed. The centurion of the Silverworm army, who looked like a young man, sneered at Duan Lingtian as his eyes flashed coldly. So what if I did? Do you think a mere crimson moon heavenly celestial like you, who has just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven, can escape from under our noses? I really think so. Facing the sneer of the centurion of the Silverworm army, Duan Lingtian's tone was still as calm as ever. Furthermore, it was filled with confidence. How dare you? How dare you? How can someone like you, who has just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven, be so presumptuous in front of the centurion? This is too much. As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army, including Wang Wei, glared at Duan Lingtian and reprimanded him. Now, with the arrival of the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army, they were full of confidence. Apart from being a violet moon heavenly celestial, the centurion of the Silverworm army also had a celestial weapon bestowed to him by the Silverworm army's Lord Commander. On the other hand, the Decanus did not have any immortal artifacts. Otherwise, their strength would be a level higher than what it was now. Although the strength displayed by the purple-clad ascender was comparable to an orange sun golden celestial, who did not use celestial methods, divine abilities, or celestial weapons, Duan Lingtian was confident in his strength. However, they did not think that the purple-clothed ascender before them would be a match for their centurion. This was because once the centurion of the Silverworm army unleashed his full strength, his strength was comparable to a green sun golden celestial, who did not use celestial methods, divine abilities, or celestial weapons, unless the purple-robed ascender in front of him could display a strength that was 2 levels higher than what he had displayed before. Otherwise, it was impossible for this purple-clothed ascender to be a match for any of the centurions in the Silverworm army. However, was it possible for this purple-robed ascender to hide so much of his strength? The 8 decurions of the Silverworm army, including Wang Wei, felt that this was impossible. Therefore, they were very confident in the centurion of their Silverworm army. You really think so? Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the centurion of the Silverworm army, who looked like a young man, was so infuriated that his expression changed drastically. His gaze towards Duan Lingtian became even colder. Even the other centurion, who looked like a middle-aged man, didn't look too good. He stared coldly at Duan Lingtian and said in a deep voice, "Since you really think so, then I'd like to see how you're going to escape from under our noses. I also want to see, how fast is your speed? How dare you make such a big statement?" The centurion of the Silver Dragon army, who looked like a young man, sneered. "How fast is my speed?" Duan Lingtian smiled. "I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Although my speed shouldn't be slower than yours, I really don't intend to rely on my speed to escape. Now I'm preparing to leave. If you want to stop me, feel free to do so. However, I want to tell you that once you make a move, don't blame me for not warning you beforehand. Don't ask for trouble." After leaving these words behind, Duan Lingtian withdrew his gaze from the two centurions of the Silverworm army before he swaggered out at a speed that was neither fast nor slow. At this moment, with Duan Lingtian's speed, any one of the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army would be able to catch up to him. Moreover, the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army were even stronger than the 8 of them. Asking for trouble? Almost as soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army could not help but look at each other. At that moment, they could see the anger in each other's eyes. Duan Lingtian's words were like a resounding slap that fiercely descended onto their faces. At this moment, they only felt that they had been underestimated. They felt extremely humiliated. "I'd like to see how you're going to make us ask for trouble. Arrogant brat. Today I'll let you know what it means by, there's always someone better than you." When Duan Lingtian left at a speed that was neither fast nor slow, the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army were enraged as well. They moved at the same time as energy swept out from their bodies. In just a blink of an eye, they had already caught up to Duan Lingtian. Moreover, they overtook Duan Lingtian and appeared in his path, blocking Duan Lingtian's path. Whoosh! At this moment, Duan Lingtian also came to a halt. Whoosh! 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 When Duan Lingtian came to a halt, the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army had also caught up to him. The 2 centurions of the Silverworm army coordinated with the other 3 centurions of the Silverworm army and surrounded Duan Lingtian. Moreover, all of them were glaring at Duan Lingtian. This was especially true for Wang Wei, whose arm and leg had been crippled by Duan Lingtian. The way he stared at Duan Lingtian was like the gaze of a hungry wolf. He could not wait to pounce on Duan Lingtian and devour him whole. However, from the beginning until the end, Duan Lingtian did not even look at the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army. It was as though they were air. It was as though they did not exist. "Let's see how I'm going to make you ask for trouble. Let me know what it means by, there's always someone better than you." Duan Lingtian looked at the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army and suddenly laughed. After a while, his laughter turned into a sneer. "Since you want to see how I'm going to make you ask for trouble, I'll fulfill your wish. At the same time, I'll let you know what it means by, there's always someone better than you." As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he made his move again. Whoosh! 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 The sound of sword whistling in the air rang in the air, as Duan Lingtian mobilized his celestial origin energy. His celestial origin energy surged out of his body, through his 99 heavenly veins, and transformed into tens of thousands of sword rays that hovered around his body and emitted terrifying sword chi. The sword chi above the tens of thousands of sword chi seemed capable of destroying everything. Duan Lingtian's celestial origin energy, that had been raised by the assist-type divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, had not been reduced to its original state when the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army arrived. For this reason, when he mobilized the celestial origin energy in his body through his 99 heavenly veins, it was as though he had cast the elementary devouring tactic twice. His celestial origin energy was comparable to the celestial origin energy of a blue moon heavenly celestial. Moreover, this was only the level of his celestial origin energy. If he cast other techniques, his strength would increase by more than just a little. In the next moment, the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army finally regained their senses. Their expressions darkened as they mobilized their energy and cast various techniques before they took out their celestial weapons. Sword formation. 13 green lotus swords. Duan Lingtian immediately cast the most powerful technique from the Sovereign Heart Sword and the offensive divine ability, the 13 green lotus swords. This time, he did not hold back at all when he cast the 13 green lotus swords. It was completely different from the 13 green lotus swords he had cast when he fought with Wang Wei earlier. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The sword formation shot out, leaving behind more than 10 afterimages. Soon after, the afterimages merged together, causing the sword formation to shine even brighter. Sword chi shot out in all directions, as though it could destroy heaven and earth. At this moment, apart from the Devata artifact, the 7 orifices exquisite sword, Duan Lingtian, had used all his techniques. His strength was comparable to a green sun golden celestial who did not use his celestial method, divine ability, or celestial weapon. It was similar to the strength of the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army, who had cast their celestial methods, divine abilities, and celestial weapons. After all, this was the extent of their strength, even if they had unleashed their full strength. The 2 centurions of the Silverworm army had a grave expression on their faces when they saw Duan Lingtian's ferocious sword formation. At this moment, they realized Duan Lingtian's strength was not inferior to theirs even if they had unleashed their full strength. How could this ascender be so strong? Even a 9 tribulation bodiless celestial, who ascended to a Devata realm and became a golden celestial wouldn't be so strong, right? He didn't even use his celestial weapon, but his strength is so strong. At this moment, the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army realized they had encountered a tough opponent. However, despite their solemn expressions, they were fearless and attacked in unison. If there was only one of them, they might only be able to fight to a draw with the purple-clad ascender. However, there were 2 of them. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Among the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army, one used a sword while the other used a saber. When they made their moves, the saber and sword emitted an ear-piercing sound that seemed to be able to blot out the heaven and earth. One had to admit the space in the Devata realms was much more stable than the space in the mundane realms. If they were in the mundane realms, the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army would have left a tear in the void that was more than 1,000 meters long. Even Duan Lingtian's sword formation would be able to create such a tear in the void. However, the attacks of the 3 centurions of the Silverworm army did not cause the space in the Devata realm to tremble at all. Everything was calm and tranquil. Only the sound of wind whistling could be heard. However, even though the sky was calm, the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army had a solemn expression on their faces. In fact, there was a hint of disbelief in the depths of their eyes. It was one thing if they could not see through the attacks of the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army. It was impossible for them to keep the celestial weapons in their spatial rings. Boom, 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 boom. After the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army's celestial weapons were snatched away, their attacks collided with Duan Lingtian's sword formation, causing an earth-shattering explosion. After the explosion, the airflow in the air shook and reversed. Gusts of violent wind swept out in all directions. What followed was a vast and majestic shockwave that swept out in all directions with an unstoppable force. Faced with the shockwaves, the 8 centurions of the Silverworm army hastily mobilized the energy in their bodies to form a layer of defense on the surface of their bodies. Otherwise, they would have been injured even if they did not die. In the end, the 2 centurions still came out on top. When the 8 centurions of the Silverworm army defended themselves against the shockwaves, they could clearly see that the combined attack of the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army was only half nullified by Duan Lingtian's sword formation. The remaining half continued to charge toward Duan Lingtian with unstoppable force. It was as though they would not rest until they killed Duan Lingtian. Under such circumstances, this ascendant will most likely die. However, do the 2 centurions really intend to kill him? If he were to die, wouldn't the immortal arts and divine abilities he had mastered vanish along with him? If that's the case, it's a pity. At this moment, the 8 centurions of the Silverworm army could not help but feel their hearts ache when they thought about the various profound techniques Duan Lingtian had mastered. They did not care about the life and death of this purple-clad ascendant. What they cared about was the various profound celestial methods and divine abilities he had mastered. This was the reason why the centurions of the Silverworm army had personally come here. He can't die. He can't die. The 2 centurions of the Silverworm army did not have time to think about how their celestial weapons were suddenly snatched away. Their expressions changed drastically when they saw the remaining half of the combined attack of the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army charging toward Duan Lingtian. If this purple-clad ascendant died, they would never be able to lay their hands on the various profound celestial methods and divine abilities he had mastered. If that was the case, would their trip here be in vain? Bang! Bang! The 2 centurions of the Silverworm army stomped their feet in the air in unison. Their energy surged again as they chased after the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army, who were charging toward Duan Lingtian at an extremely fast speed. Boom! 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 At the same time, the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army raised their hands and cast their techniques one after another. Waves of boundless energy swept out in an attempt to rescue Duan Lingtian from the abyss of suffering. Chapter 2583. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was holding a sword in one hand and a saber in the other. The saber and sword in his hands were the celestial weapons that belonged to the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army. What's going on? That's the celestial weapons of the 2 centurions, right? How did it end up in his hands? At this moment, not only were the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army confused, but the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army were also confused. They could not figure it out at all. How did the celestial weapons of the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army end up in the hands of this purple-clad ascender? Moreover, this purple-clad ascender seemed to have relied on the power of the celestial weapons to avert a life-or-death situation, and even turn the tables around. They more or less caught a glimpse of the last scene that had just happened. If this purple-clad ascender had not stopped in time, the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army would have died without a doubt. Were you the one who snatched our celestial weapons? The centurion of the Silverworm army, who looked like a middle-aged man, stared at Duan Lingtian in disbelief. At this time, he also realized that the power that snatched away the immortal artifact in his hand must have originated from this ascender. Otherwise, his immortal artifact would not have ended up in the hands of this ascender. What kind of technique is that? When the centurion of the Silverworm army, with the appearance of a young man, looked at Duan Lingtian again, his eyes were burning with greed. It was as though he had forgotten that he was a centurion of the Silverworm army. If Duan Lingtian had not held back earlier, he would have died without a burial ground. However, Duan Lingtian did not reply to the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army. He only said indifferently, although I know both of you wanted to save me because you wanted to obtain my celestial methods and divine abilities, Both of you did not intend to kill me. Therefore, I won't hold it against both of you. These two celestial weapons will be the price both of you have to pay." After Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he did not even look at the two centurions of the Silverworm army as he turned around and prepared to leave. Just as Duan Lingtian was about to leave, a voice rang in the air. "Brat!" The centurion of the Silverworm army, who looked like a young man, glared at Duan Lingtian's back and said coldly, "Even if you have an immortal artifact, do you really think you can defeat us? Don't forget that you're just a Crimson Moon heavenly celestial who has just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven. Perhaps, with the profound immortal techniques and divine abilities you've mastered, and the immortal artifacts you've taken from us, you might be able to display a combat strength that's stronger than ours. However, you're only stronger than us in material attacks. If we use soul attacks, even if we're not good at it, you won't be able to withstand it with your soul. That's only at the level of a Crimson Moon heavenly celestial. So, I advise you to hand over our celestial equipment and follow us back to the Silverworm army." At the end of his sentence, the centurion of the Silverworm army, who looked like a young man, sounded threatening. It was as though he was going to launch a soul attack on Duan Lingtian. "Yeah, how could I forget? We can still use soul attacks to deal with him." Wang Wei, one of the decurions of the Silverworm army, who was standing at the side, suddenly brightened when he heard the centurion of the Silverworm army's words. "He's so strong that we often forget that he's just a Crimson Moon heavenly celestial. With the level of his soul, he won't be able to withstand any soul attack from any of us. Among the 8 of us, the one with the lowest cultivation base is a Blue Moon heavenly celestial." The celestial sword in Duan Lingtian's hand shone with sword rays as it merged with the celestial origin energy that surged out of his body. Following that, the sword rays transformed into a sword formation again, before dozens of afterimages appeared in the air. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. After the dozens of afterimages of the sword formation merged together, the energy of the sword formation soared. When it shot out again, it seemed as though it could destroy heaven and earth. Its target was the centurion of the Silverworm army, who had cast his soul attack on Duan Lingtian. "Humph, you may be strong, but it's impossible for you to kill me in one strike and take me down with you." The centurion of the Silverworm army, who looked like a young man, smirked coldly when he saw Duan Lingtian's ferocious attack. It was as though he had expected this. "At most, I'll be severely injured. As for you, you'll definitely die." The expression of the centurion of the Silverworm army turned solemn as soon as he finished speaking. The celestial origin energy that he had been accumulating surged out of his body and formed a thick translucent wall in front of him, as though he had the help of the gods. The wall in front of him was like an indestructible fortress. At this critical moment, the centurion of the Silverworm army, who was well prepared, cast his defensive technique. Apart from casting his defensive technique, the centurion of the Silverworm army did not remain idle. His celestial origin energy surged out of his body as he unleashed his strongest attack against Duan Lingtian's sword formation. Based on what had happened, it was clear the centurion of the Silverworm army had been prepared for this. If he was not prepared, he would have died under Duan Lingtian's attack. However, now that he was prepared, he would only be severely injured. "Let's see how you'll die." After that, the centurion of the Silverworm army, who looked like a young man, stared at the soul attack that he cast earlier. He watched as the streak of light entered Duan Lingtian's body, as though it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. He smiled. It was as though he could already see the scene of Duan Lingtian's soul being destroyed by his soul attack. On the other side, Duan Lingtian remained calm in the face of the soul attack cast by the centurion of the Silverworm army. It was as though he did not think much of the centurion of the Silverworm army's soul attack. Indeed, this was the truth. After the centurion of the Silverworm army's soul attack penetrated Duan Lingtian's body, it headed straight for Duan Lingtian's soul, as though it was trying to destroy Duan Lingtian's soul. When the soul attack approached Duan Lingtian's soul, the scene that Duan Lingtian had expected appeared. The defective metal piece that was hovering next to Duan Lingtian's soul suddenly shone brightly. As for the soul attack, it was directly swallowed by it. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. It was as if it had never appeared. From the beginning until the end, Duan Lingtian's soul was not affected at all. A violet moon heavenly celestial soul attack. Is this all there is to it? At the same time, Duan Lingtian said disdainfully, as he looked at the centurion of the Silverworm army, who was looking at him, as though he was looking at a dead person. How's this possible? The centurion of the Silverworm army, who was confident of victory, widened his eyes in shock when he saw his soul attack had failed to kill Duan Lingtian. It was as though he had just seen a ghost. Boom, 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 boom. Chapter 2584. It was just as the centurion of the Silverworm army had expected. Although Duan Lingtian's attack with the celestial sword was powerful, it was not enough to kill the centurion of the Silverworm army. After the centurion of the celestial sword blocked half of the attack, it could only injure the centurion of the Silverworm army. Barf! The centurion of the Silverworm army, who was severely injured by Duan Lingtian, turned pale immediately. He opened his mouth and threw up a mouthful of blood. The centurion of the Silverworm army had expected this. At this moment, he should be happy because he had escaped a calamity. However, he couldn't bring himself to be happy at all. This was because he had expected Duan Lingtian to be killed by his soul attack. No. Impossible. Impossible. The centurion of the Silverworm army looked at Duan Lingtian as though he had just seen a ghost. You're just a crimson moon heavenly celestial. How can you remain unharmed under my soul attack? Impossible. Impossible. At this moment, the centurion of the Silverworm army was not the only one who was looking at Duan Lingtian as though he had just seen a ghost. Even the centurion of the Silverworm army, who looked like a middle-aged man, was looking at Duan Lingtian as though he had just seen a ghost. Initially, the centurion of the Silverworm army thought Duan Lingtian would definitely die when the centurion of the Silverworm army unleashed his soul attack. How's he still alive? He's just a crimson moon heavenly celestial who has just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven? The centurion of the Silverworm army, who looked like a middle-aged man, was shocked. The other decurions of the Silverworm army, including Wang Wei, looked at each other in confusion. How's this possible? This person who has just ascended is unharmed after being attacked by Lord Centurion's soul attack? How did he do it? This is unbelievable. When Lord Centurion said he was going to use his soul attack on Duan Lingtian, I thought of using my soul attack to kill Duan Lingtian first. Now that I think about it, it's a good thing I didn't do that. The 8 decurions of the Silver Dragon army were completely dumbfounded. How could he withstand Lord Centurion's soul attack? Furthermore, he doesn't seem to be affected at all. Wang Wei looked at Duan Lingtian, and a trace of fear flashed across his face. Because just now, he had almost used a soul attack on Duan Lingtian. Now that he thought about it, if he had used a soul attack on Duan Lingtian first, he would have definitely become a mortal enemy of the Duan Lingtian. Judging from the strength that Duan Lingtian had displayed, even if the 2 centurions of the Silverworm army wanted to protect him, they were powerless. Unless you have a soul defense celestial weapon. At this moment, the centurion of the Silverworm army, who looked like a young man, seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly exclaimed, and his face became extremely pale in an instant. At this moment, he confirmed this in his heart. If a Crimson Moon celestial immortal didn't have a soul-protecting immortal artifact, there was no way he could have blocked his soul attack. A soul-protecting celestial weapon? The other centurion of the Silverworm army narrowed his eyes in shock. That seems to be the only possibility. Why didn't I think of that? That's right. He's just a Crimson Moon heavenly celestial who has just ascended to a Devata realm. If he doesn't have a soul-protecting celestial weapon, how could he have withstood Lord Centurion's soul attack? If he really has a soul-protecting celestial weapon, it'll make up for his weak soul. At the same time, the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army, including Wang Wei, were certain Duan Ling Tian possessed a soul defense celestial weapon after they heard the young centurion's words. Otherwise, there was no way to explain everything that was happening before his eyes. A soul-protecting celestial weapon is one of the rarest celestial weapons. The value of a primitive soul-protecting celestial weapon is comparable to a mediocre offensive celestial weapon. I wonder what grade the soul defensive celestial artifact he possesses is. If his soul-protecting celestial weapon is only a primitive celestial weapon, it'll only be able to withstand soul attacks from heavenly celestials at most. It won't be able to withstand soul attacks from golden celestials or above. I think his soul-protecting celestial weapon is only a primitive celestial weapon. After all, soul-protecting celestial weapons are rare to begin with. Since he's just ascended to a Devata realm, his soul-protecting celestial weapon shouldn't be of a high grade. I don't think so. Don't forget that the celestial methods and divine abilities he has mastered are extremely profound. Perhaps he obtained his soul-protecting celestial weapon when he obtained the profound celestial methods and divine abilities in the mundane realm? If that's the case, then his soul-protecting celestial weapon must be of a high grade. When the 8 decurions from the Silverworm army looked at Duan Ling Tian again, their eyes were filled with envy and jealousy. A few of them, including Wang Wei, had a hint of greed in their eyes. I've given you a chance. Duan Ling Tian remained calm as he faced the centurion of the Silverworm army. However, a hint of killing intent could be seen in his eyes. It was as though he was about to devour the centurion of the Silverworm army. You can't kill me. I'm a centurion of the Silverworm army. If you kill me, you'll offend the Silverworm army. The centurion of the Silverworm army's expression changed drastically when he saw the killing intent in Duan Ling Tian's eyes. His body began to tremble violently from fear. Moreover, he was severely injured now. Even if he was not severely injured and was in his peak condition, he would not be a match for this purple-clad ascendant without his celestial weapon. Moreover, Duan Ling Tian had a celestial weapon with him. It was already a miracle that he did not die from Duan Ling Tian's earlier attack. If Duan Ling Tian attacked him again, he would definitely die. Silverworm army? Duan Ling Tian smiled when he heard the words of the centurion of the Silverworm army. Are you saying that only the Silverworm army is allowed to kill others, and others are not allowed to retaliate? I'll say it again. I've given you a chance. Duan Ling Tian's eyes turned cold when he finished speaking. The tens of thousands of sword rays that surrounded him suddenly shot out dazzling sword rays. The expression of the other centurion of the Silverworm army changed drastically when he sensed Duan Ling Tian's killing intent. He instinctively wanted to help Duan Ling Tian. Today I'll only kill him. If anyone wants to help him, let him die. The middle-aged centurion of the Silverworm army, who was about to make a move, shuddered when he heard Duan Ling Tian's words. He quickly came to a halt. As for the 8 decurions of the Silverworm army, their bodies seemed to have stiffened at this moment. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The sound of sword whistling rang in the air as the heavily injured centurion of the Silverworm army cried out in pain before he was killed by Duan Ling Tian. A violet moon heavenly celestial, a peak heavenly celestial, had died. Swoosh. After killing the centurion of the Silverworm army, Duan Ling Tian took the centurion's spatial ring with a wave of his hand. This saves me the trouble of looking for my spatial ring. Spatial rings from the mundane realm could not be brought to the Devata realms. However, there were spatial rings in the Devata realms, and they were celestial weapons. In the Devata realms, the rarest celestial weapon was none other than a spatial ring. After all, any heavenly celestial with some strength would be able to obtain a spatial ring. As for other celestial weapons, even the most common offensive celestial weapons, apart from celestials with strong backgrounds, could only be obtained by golden celestials or stronger. The 2 centurions of the Silverworm army were only violet moon heavenly celestials. The reason they possessed celestial weapons was due to their background. Their background was the Silverworm Army in Bloody Spectre City. Swoosh. After killing the centurion of the Silverworm Army and taking his spatial ring and the saber celestial weapons, Duan Lingtian left the celestial ascension pool in just a blink of an eye. In just a blink of an eye, he had disappeared from the sight of the centurion and the decurions. Lord Centurion, are we just going to let this go? After Duan Lingtian left, Wang Wei looked at the remaining centurion of the Silverworm Army and said with bloodshot eyes, "If news of this spreads, the Silverworm Army's reputation will be tarnished. A newcomer who has just ascended to the spirit overarching heaven has killed a centurion of the Silverworm Army. If those fellows from the Black Dragon Army find out about this, they'll definitely take this opportunity to mock the Silverworm Army." Wang Wei's expression was filled with resentment when he spoke. Of course, although he seemed to be filled with righteous indignation and seemed to be thinking for the Silverworm Army, he actually wanted to take revenge for his personal grudge. After all, it was Duan Lingtian who severed his arm and leg and crippled him. Humph. I think you just want the Silverworm Army to seek revenge for you, right? As a centurion of the Silverworm Army, naturally, he was not someone to be trifled with. He glanced at Wang Wei coldly, causing Wang Wei to lower his head in fear. Lord Centurion, perhaps Wang Wei wants to seek revenge, but what he said makes sense as well. At this moment, another decurion of the Silverworm Army stood up and said, "If news of this spreads, it'll be a great humiliation to the Silverworm Army. As members of the Silverworm Army, we naturally won't spread news of today's matter. However, who knows if that newcomer will spread news of today's matter. After all, if news of this spreads, it'll be a great humiliation to him as well." When the decurion of the Silverworm Army finished speaking, the other 6 decurions nodded in agreement. "Of course, I'm aware of this. I'll return to the camp now and personally report this matter to Lord Centurion." That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.